My Star Empire. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 726 Doomsday. In addition, secretly transfer 1 million energy coins to these families. This money is enough for them to buy a better house and a more comfortable life. These clone soldiers should also be retired as soon as possible, and strive to have all the replacement clone soldiers retired and go home within 2 years. Mingze tapped the table with his middle finger. Understood. A group of officers stood up and saluted. Dozens of days later, these dead soldiers reappeared in the Imperial fleet, but these soldiers no longer had the memory of going to the Spiral Galaxy. The information about their being sent to the Spiral Galaxy has been classified as the highest level of mechanical storage by the Empire and stored in the underground of the Imperial Palace. The memories of these people have also changed. Because of the temporary order, the Empire replaced the fleet going to the Spiral Galaxy with clone soldiers to control. And these natural soldiers were sent to the hibernation chamber and sent back to the Empire. These forged memories are too real, and these clone soldiers believe it. Although they still have a headache because the memory has just been implanted, it did not arouse their suspicion. These soldiers did not think that they were actually not themselves anymore, they were just clone substitutes. After all this, the Empire's invasion of the Spiral Federation became zero sacrifice. No Imperial citizen was lost. The only loss was a bunch of warships that could be rebuilt as long as there were resources. With such low losses, the citizens of the Empire were extremely supportive of conquering other river systems. Since conquering a new river system would not sacrifice anyone, why not conquer more river systems? Although it seems that conquering a new river system has little to do with the citizens of the Empire, they can get the opportunity to open up new river systems. Every time there is a new territory to be opened up, the Empire will take this opportunity to give birth to a large number of landlords and wealthy people. Therefore, the citizens of the Empire are full of interest in conquering other river systems. Overnight, the call for the Empire to occupy the Spiral River system as soon as possible is getting louder and louder. Taking this opportunity, the Imperial government sold pre-sold tickets to the public. You only need to pay 100,000 energy coins to participate in the colonization and opening up of a new river system. In addition, the Imperial Royal Bank will also provide unsecured loans for families without energy coins to apply for loans. The 100 billion tickets representing the colonization and opening up of a new river system were sold out in an instant. 80% of them chose to take out loans to buy colonization tickets for their families. Taking this opportunity, the Imperial government made a fortune, and all the funds transferred will be used to build civilian colonization ships. At the same time, in the Spiral Galaxy, the Imperial fleet has been recorrected, and the remaining Zeus-class battleships have been divided into 4 fleets, led by White Dwarf-class battleships, and rushed into the territory of the Federation. At the same time, a decapitation fleet consisting of 10,000 White Dwarf-class battleships and the Imperial flagship fortress set off directly to the star system where the Federal Parliament is located. The Empire's bee swarm has recovered to 3 trillion wasp fighters because of sufficient materials. These 3 trillion wasp fighters follow the Empire's landing fleet to start clearing the star system around the Empire's landing point. Any defensive facilities of the Federation and military facilities on the ground that are unwilling to surrender are all devoured by the bee swarm into materials. With the help of these 3 trillion wasp fighters, the speed at which the Empire occupied the territory of the Federation can be described as lightning fast. Basically, once the swarms arrived, more than half of the planets would surrender, and the remaining half would soon be left with only the bases of buildings and roads under the attack of these swarms. All the buildings and rebels on the entire planet became materials for the mothership to manufacture wasp fighters. In order to transmit these materials back, the Empire also specially sent spacecraft to sprinkle the Empire's unique equipment material transmission transfer station along the way. If you look at it from the hologram, the star field occupied by the Empire will be larger every day. According to federal residents who survived the Empire's swarms by chance. Before the Empire's swarms and landing fleets arrived, they had already felt the condensed air, and people's sixth sense told them that something bad would happen. When the swarms came to the orbit of this planet, these people realized that a disaster was coming. The black fighters that covered the sky directly covered the sky, and only a trace of sunlight shone into the earth through the gaps between these fighters. At that time, the citizens of the Federation screamed and ran on the streets, and everyone put down their work. In their opinion, everything was meaningless, and everyone's mind was only about escape. 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 Originally, these people could have survived, but unfortunately, they encountered a crazy planetary governor. The planetary governor claimed to the Imperial fleet that the people under his rule would fight the Empire to the death until only the last person was left. At the same time, the planetary governor also called on people to pick up their weapons and fight the Empire to the end through the radio. However, he ignored that the Empire was not a civilization in this galaxy, and any chivalry clauses were invalid for the Empire. For the Empire, any threatening target will be eliminated without hesitation. Whether you are a soldier or an ordinary person, when your representative announces that you will fight the Empire to the end, these people are automatically judged as threatening targets. No one in the Empire restrains it from being kind to people of other civilizations. In the eyes of the citizens of the Empire, these races that are different from humans cannot even be called humans. Humans are ruthless when slaughtering their own kind, let alone other races of other civilizations. When the nose of the Wasp fighter hovering in the sky emitted a red light, the people on the ground did not know that the god of death had arrived. All the Wasp fighters suddenly raised their heads and rushed to the sky. Just when the people on the ground thought that these fighters were going to retreat, these fighters suddenly turned around again and aimed their red flashing hot multi-composition horns at the ground. Then these Wasp fighters fell from the sky in an orderly manner like a meteor shower. However, because the Empire fighters were arranged too closely, in the eyes of the Federation people on the ground, the sky seemed to have collapsed. No, this was the most frequently shouted word in the crowd. But unfortunately, the decision of their planetary governor made these people fall into the abyss. The artificial intelligence responsible for the control of the Wasp fighters, that is, Eva's daughters, did not set in their prohibition instructions that ordinary people's requests for mercy could be exempted from the combat plan. After all, a war needs to take the overall situation into consideration. So no matter how these people shouted, it was useless. As long as the planetary governor did not surrender, the Empire's fighters would not stop. Chapter 727 Suicide Trap. The red sky curtain that fell from the sky smashed directly into the ground. Any buildings it touched were melted and decomposed and sent back to the mothership. In just a few seconds, there was no building on the entire planet that was higher than the ground. Even the roads parallel to the ground were damaged and bumpy. In addition, all living things on the ground had disappeared. The underground fortress where the governor of this planet was hiding became the focus of attention. The location of the original fortress was left with a huge sinkhole with a diameter of tens of kilometers. Whenever the survivor thought of this horrible scene, his body began to tremble involuntarily. At that time, after the swarm solved all the threatening targets, the Empire's landing ship landed on the planet with a full load of clone soldiers. Although the cities on the surface had been destroyed, there were still many underground facilities on the planet. The task of the clone soldiers was to occupy these underground facilities. After seeing the Empire's clone army, the staff and soldiers in these facilities actually raised their hands and walked out of the bunker. They had seen clearly what the Empire had just done to this planet through cameras in various places. It was really terrifying. All the people and buildings were instantly decomposed and quiet. They dared not imagine how painful it would be if they became like this. Just as the Empire's landing troops were constantly attacking cities, the decapitation fleet led by the Empire's flagship fortress had already arrived at the outer star system, where the Federal Parliament was located through hyperspace. However, to Li Mingze's surprise, the Empire did not encounter any resistance in this star system, and even the star system defense system outside this star system was not turned on. The space stations passed along the way were all in a dormant state, and even the lights on the space stations had been turned off. What happened? Has this Federal Parliament given up resistance? Li Mingze moved the holographic screen to observe the surrounding space stations in confusion. I don't know, but we did not scan any life signals in these space stations. All the equipment in these space stations is also in dormancy. We did not scan any abnormal energy fluctuations, and even their space station reactors have been extinguished. Tianyi shook his head and enlarged the hologram of the entire star system in front of Li Mingze. Did our Imperial Eye scan any suspicious fleet movements? Li Mingze frowned. No, according to the data scanned during this period, no abnormal energy fluctuations were detected in this star system or the surrounding star systems. That is to say, there are no enemy ships ambushing around this star system, and there are no suspicious buildings. Tianyi shook his head and replied. What is this Federation doing? Mingze suddenly had a bad premonition, but this premonition was fleeting and did not attract his attention. Sir, the Star Orbit space station where the Federal Parliament is located has just sent us a message, indicating that they are willing to surrender to the Empire. Suddenly, an officer raised his head and shouted to Mingze. Oh? Let's go and take a look. All fleet speed up. Mingze waved his hand. The fortress took the lead and rushed to the front of the fleet, leading 10,000 White Dwarf-class battleships to rush towards the space station where the Federal Parliament is located. The Federal Parliament space station is located in the star orbit of this star system. Because of its special nature of being composed of 31 advanced civilizations, the appearance of this space also contains the special appearance design of 31 civilizations. At the same time, this space station was also jointly funded and built by these 31 civilizations. The entire disc-shaped space station is 20 kilometers high and more than 300 kilometers in diameter. It is wide inside and narrow outside, and looks like a flying saucer from the Earth period. At the bottom of the space station, a 5-kilometer diameter tower extends downward from the middle. From this tower, more than 10 piers extend in all directions parallel to the space station disk. The outer sides of these piers are already full of various spaceships and warships. However, what is a little strange is that although there are so many spaceships and warships docked, there are no spaceships flying in space in the entire star system. The entire star system is dead silent, as if it is a dead place without any human habitation. When the Imperial fleet approached the space station, the pier at the bottom of the space station was still rotating, and the space station was also brightly lit, forming a sharp contrast with the decommissioned space fortresses outside. Has the Federation gathered all its people in this space station? Did they gather all the personnel to surrender to the Empire? Mingze muttered to himself. If that was the case, then the deactivation of the space fortresses outside and a lack of spacecraft activity in this star system would make sense, but it would be better to be careful. Your Majesty, the other party has sent a secret key for docking. Should we dock? An officer raised his head and reported to Mingze. Send a White Dwarf-class battleship to dock first and use the robot troops to eliminate all the threats inside. Wait until it is confirmed to be safe and then we will go there by landing craft. We will wait here first. Mingze waved his hand and ordered a White Dwarf-class battleship to dock at the Federation's space station. At this time, the rest of the White Dwarf-class battleships and the fortress also shut down their thrusters and quietly floated beside the space station to observe. But the Empire did not know that when they stopped, they had already met the conditions that the Federation hoped to achieve. The Federal Parliament space station, which was right in front of the Imperial fleet, suddenly separated a module with a diameter of tens of kilometers. On the separation line of this module, hundreds of thrusters worked frantically, pushing this module into the star. What is this Federation trying to do? All warships start hyperspace and leave the star system. Mingze instantly felt an extremely dangerous feeling, which made him want to leave this dangerous place as soon as possible. But it was too late. At this moment, the fortress located outside the star system just suddenly opened its reactor, and the equipment that could shield hyperspace jumps and transmissions started to operate at full power at the same time. The several superluminal ways that the Empire could leave the star system all failed, leaving only the subliminal speed. Your Majesty, we detected a large amount of antimatter reaction in the module sent into the star by the other party. The other party wants to destroy this star with antimatter, Tianyi suddenly said in shock. That's right, the Federation has gathered all the antimatter stored by the 30 surviving civilizations into this space station. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 728 Fleet in the Energy Storm. These 30 advanced civilizations have been secretly researching and manufacturing this supermatter that can destroy everything. Originally, due to the general environment, each civilization did not dare to bring this super weapon to the public. However, under the threat of the Imperial fleet, these advanced civilizations decisively took out all the antimatter they had hidden and gathered them together. After calculating and determining that these antimatter could destroy the star, the Federal Parliament decisively sent all the antimatter to the space station where the Federal Parliament was located. After a simple modification of the escape module originally used for evacuation on the space station, the antimatter was filled in. After introducing the Imperial fleet into the star system, the Federal Parliament seized the opportunity when the Imperial fleet stopped and decisively launched the antimatter into the star. The space station module wrapped in antimatter instantly melted under the high temperature of the star, releasing the antimatter inside into the star. The Imperial battleship, which sensed something wrong, immediately began to turn about and wanted to rush out of the star system. Because of its huge size, the heavy fortress, although it has a large number of thrusters, its maneuverability is far inferior to that of the Empire's White Dwarf-class battleship. In addition, these thrusters need to be pre-started for a period of time, which directly led to the Imperial fortress not turning around when the star began to show abnormalities. In an instant, the energy generated by the star explosion turned into an energy shock wave and spread to the surroundings. The Federal Parliament space station located in the orbit of the star was the first to bear the brunt and turned directly into ashes in this boundless sea of fire. Then the light curtain formed by the energy shock began to expand wildly around, gradually approaching the fortress, which was adjusting its direction. Shut down all useless equipment. Transfer all energy to the shield. All personnel in the fortress immediately go to the safe house for refuge. All life support systems in the spacecraft are shut down, and each personnel relies on the life support devices of their own power armor. At the same time, all maintenance robots are online and ready to repair the injured units. Molecular robots are immediately deployed to the middle of the battleship to fill the damaged parts. Prepare to abandon the outer dimensional armor of the fortress. Once the energy it absorbs reaches its upper limit, it will be decomposed and fired immediately. Mingze buckled his power armor helmet and issued a series of instructions to everyone. The people who received the order hurriedly began to work on the consoles and turned on all the life support equipment on their power armors. At the same time, the guards responsible for protecting the command center of the fortress lifted the roadblocks, closed the heavy alloy door in front of them tightly, and turned to run into the corridor. The guards standing in the corridor also turned around and lined up in a long line, and evacuated to the command center in an orderly manner. Every time the team advanced a distance, the alloy-sealed door behind them would fall heavily, and the lights in the corridor began to go out one by one. At the same time, all the residents in the city of the fortress also evacuated to the safe houses on the fortress through the emergency evacuation passage. These safe houses are all set up under the city, wrapped in layers of heavy armor, and store enough food, air and water for everyone on the fortress to survive for 50 years. With the help of the Marines, the crew members who rushed into the safe house laid down in a hibernation chamber, which has an independent life support system and energy system. The sturdy hibernation chamber can be the last line of defense to protect these crew members. After the Marines themselves lay down in the dormant chambers, these dormant chambers slowly descended into a huge pool. The liquid in the pool immediately turned into a semi-solid state after entering the dormant chambers. These liquids will play a role in isolating temperature and reducing impact force, and can barely be regarded as a barrier. Unlike the crew members in the city, those crew members who are still at work and too far away from the safe house can only enter the safe chamber closest to the workplace. These safe chambers sank under the floor after closing, and the heavy metal shells tightly wrapped them up. Whether they can survive this disaster depends entirely on fate. After confirming that all the personnel on the spacecraft have entered the safety facilities, Mingze breathed a sigh of relief. When these spacecrafts were built, natural disasters were taken into consideration, and many safety facilities that can protect the lives of the crew were reserved at the beginning of the design. Unexpectedly, these facilities actually came in handy, which has to be said to be a blessing in disguise. After the officers in the bridge and the guards who rushed back from outside the command center joined together, they all entered the safety room on the side of the command center. After lying down in the dormant chamber in the safe room, the dormant chambers slowly closed their hatches. Except for Mingze and several senior officers, everyone fell into dormancy, so that even if they did not make it in the end, these people would not have any pain. Of course, Mingze and these senior officers all used the Advent substitute to come to this flagship, so they did not enter the dormant state, but hid in the dormant chamber to continue monitoring the situation of the battleship. Your Majesty, the energy impact of the star explosion is expected to arrive in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, As soon as Tianyi's voice fell, Mingze, who was hiding in the dormant chamber, felt a violent vibration. At this time, the shield of the fortress had just resisted the first wave of energy impact, and it began to fail. The blue shield was flashing wildly. The seemingly huge body of the fortress kept rising and falling in this boundless energy sea, just like a small boat in a storm. In order to survive, all the White Dwarf-class battleships hid behind the Imperial fortress, allowing the Imperial fortress to withstand the first wave of impact. As more and more energy filled the surrounding space, the temperature around the fortress's shield began to rise sharply, and the energy it endured increased. Finally, the fortress's shield could no longer hold on, and was instantly swallowed by the surrounding energy. The first thing these rampaging energies came into contact with was the outermost dimensional armor of the fortress. Because of the fortress's huge size and complex structure, the dimensional armor on its surface has a very large area. Such a large area gives this layer of dimensional armor an unimaginable upper limit for energy tolerance. But even so, facing the raging flames released by the detonation of the star, this layer of dimensional armor is still somewhat pale and powerless. Mingze sighed secretly as he looked at the rising percentage of the dimensional armor's upper limit in front of him. At this rate of energy absorption, it may not take long before the outer dimensional armor of the fortress will be charged to the upper limit. Chapter 729 End. As expected, after dozens of seconds, the energy absorbed by the Imperial fortress's dimensional armor had reached the upper limit of the energy it could absorb. Looking at the flashing red alarm signal, Mingze decisively started the dimensional armor's abandonment program. In an instant, the outer dimensional armor of the fortress was cut into dozens of pieces and launched from the Imperial fortress. The dimensional armor launched from the fortress had just entered the surrounding energy and instantly converted to a three-dimensional state because it reached its upper limit. Dozens of extremely thick and huge metal blocks instantly appeared in the original place. Although any material can be made into dimensional armor, the higher the density and quality of the material, the more energy the manufactured dimensional armor absorbs, so the Empire basically uses the armor materials of battleships to manufacture dimensional armor. If Mingze had not launched the dimensional armor just now, the dimensional armor that suddenly returned to the three-dimensional state could instantly squeeze and deform the outer shell of the fortress. After all, its mass was too large, enough to be equivalent to the mass of 10 fortress battleships. However, these metal blocks had been launched to the surroundings, and once again took on a lot of energy for the fortress. As time passed, these metal blocks were gradually melted by energy into a pool of liquid and shot to the outer edge of the star system with a shock wave. At this time, only 2 layers of thickened crystal armor were left to protect the fortress. The extremely high melting point, super density and hardness allow this layer of crystal armor to withstand the terrifying energy released by the star explosion for a longer time. However, even so, Mingze, who was hiding in the dormant chamber, could already hear the metal twisting sound coming from the huge body of the fortress through the surrounding metal layers. This is because some metals began to expand due to heat, exceeding the original structural limitations, but these are still within the tolerance range of the fortress. After all, the thermal expansion of these metals was taken into account when it was designed. However, the facts are often cruel. The outermost layer of crystal of the fortress did not last too long before it began to reach the melting point. These armors forged with crystals began to melt like candles, but fortunately this was only the first layer of crystal armor. It's okay, just hold on for a while, and when the impact spreads to a larger and larger area, the energy density of the central area where they are located will decrease, and then the crisis will naturally be resolved. Mingze comforted himself like this. But the facts slapped him in the face again. After dozens of minutes, the first layer of the letter crystal armor had disappeared into the universe with the energy impact. The second layer of the letter crystal armor had also melted to an extremely serious degree. It would not be long before this layer of the letter crystal armor would also melt completely. At that time, the fortress would be completely swallowed by the energy and become part of the universe. A few minutes later, listening to the constant sound of metal tearing coming from the fortress, Mingze was numb. The outermost layer of the letter crystal armor was completely destroyed. And now there was only a layer of ordinary armor protecting the fortress. But this layer of armor was too useless. It had just come into contact with the energy rushing from the surroundings, and some places had been melted through. Now the occasional explosions in the fortress were caused by those cabins that were melted through. Fortunately, the outer area of the fortress had a good isolation mechanism, and now these explosions have not spread completely. Just when Mingze was about to give up the fortress and planned to descend into the new clone again, the metal tearing sound of the fortress suddenly stopped. The occasional explosions in the fortress also gradually stopped. As the energy shock passed, Mingze looked at the floating panel in front of him with some doubts. However, the sensors used to monitor the changes in the external environment of the fortress had just been dissolved, and now he could not receive any information or data from the outside. Tianyi, send me the images of each cabin inside the fortress, Mingze shouted into the microphone beside him. But to his surprise, he did not receive a reply from Tianyi. Helplessly, he could only use his mind to control the system to mobilize the video data. Usually, Mingze was used to conveying orders to Tianyi, which made him somewhat unable to use the Empire system. It was too convenient to just tell Tianyi what he needed and he would get it, without having to search in the system himself. But now that he had lost contact with Tianyi, he had to do it himself. A few minutes later, the images of various departments and facilities in the fortress and the city appeared in his mind. Looking at the city that had fallen into darkness and the relatively normal facilities, Mingze breathed a sigh of relief. The most important antimatter storage facilities, reactors and safe houses on the fortress were not damaged. The only uncertainty now is the cabins on the outer layer of the fortress. Now these cabins have lost contact with the main engine, and it seems that they are in danger. All maintenance robots start working, and the molecular robots immediately go to the damaged parts to fill the gaps. Following Mingze's order, the maintenance robots in the fortress immediately rushed from their respective warehouses to the damaged cabins. At the same time, the molecular robots that can be shaped at will also came to the cabins that lost contact with the Empire through the pipeline. According to the original design of this spacecraft, these molecular robots poured into these cabins like a tide and began to repair them. After the molecular robots poured in, the other half of the cabin that had disappeared began to reappear. Soon, a cabin exactly the same as the original design appeared intact in the fortress. The maintenance robots came directly to the outside of the fortress, and their maintenance nozzles directly printed out layers of armor. Many parts of the fortress that were melted through were gradually reprinted with a layer of armor. As the outer shell and outer cabins of the fortress were gradually repaired, the interior of the fortress was also resupplied with energy. Street lights were lit again, and the city inside the fortress regained its light. After confirming that the external space was safe through the sensors of the maintenance robot, Mingze directly woke up the sleeping crew members. One by one, the dormant chambers rose to the surface again. And at the same time, the semi-solid buffer isolation fluid turned into liquid again. The dormant chambers rose from them, and a large amount of liquid slid down the smooth outer shell of the dormant chambers into the pools. As the metal plates on both sides closed to the middle, the upper layer of these pools was covered with a layer of frosted metal floor. The crew members in the dormant chambers rubbed their heads, which were a little uncomfortable, and climbed out of the dormant chambers. Some of the more unlucky people were hiding in the safe chambers that were located in the cabins destroyed by energy, and unfortunately they were transformed into the most basic elements together with those cabins. Chapter 730 Stellar Chessboard. Only a few lucky ones were not melted down with the cabins, but the safe cabins they were in were already wrapped in melted metal. Report the damage. Mingze opened the cover of the dormant cabin in front of him, stood on the floor and ordered the shipborne intelligence. After losing contact with Tianyi, Mingze could only activate the backup shipborne intelligence to assist him in controlling the warship. The damage is being counted. The dimensional armor of the fortress has been detached. The first layer of the letter crystal armor has melted, and the second layer of the letter crystal armor has melted. The damage rate of the bottom layer of ordinary armor is 37.61%, 3,241 damaged cabins on the outer layer, 326 damaged cabins, and 1,291 crew members sacrificed. The fortress's fortress guns have lost 31%, 2 of the 10 secondary guns have been damaged, and all 3 main guns have been damaged. There is no damage to the antimatter storage cabin. The shipborne intelligence quickly sent the damage situation to Mingze. Mingze breathed a sigh of relief when he saw these data. As long as the main structure of the fortress is not damaged, it can be rebuilt. Fortunately, the storage warehouse for antimatter is located in the center of the fortress and is not threatened by the star explosion. Otherwise, once the antimatter storage warehouse explodes, the entire fortress will be destroyed along with the star. Not only that, the antimatter carried in the fortress is enough to destroy the star more than 10 times. The encounter of so much antimatter with the debris produced by the star explosion will definitely increase the power of the explosion by dozens of times, and the surrounding star systems may be destroyed. Moreover, the various rays released by this explosion are fatal to life planets within hundreds of light years. All the crew members on the fortress have left their hibernation and are now rushing to their respective posts. The maintenance robot is cooperating with a molecular robot to rebuild the fortress's information collector and various scanners. We will be able to reconnect with the outside world soon. Mingze walked to his command seat while the shipboard intelligence reported the latest developments in his ear. At this time, the fortress was rejuvenated. The staff who woke up from hibernation put on power armor and picked up tools and rushed to the outside of the fortress. Since most of the gravity simulation devices in the warship are still offline, the gravity in the entire spacecraft is extremely weak, and the crew can jump dozens of meters with just a light jump. However, this also greatly facilitates the crew's journey, so the artificial gravity system is placed at the end of the maintenance list. The crew quickly jumped forward on the ground with the maintenance guns. After passing through the layers of armor melted by the energy released by the star explosion, the first staff member came to the space outside the warship. The crew who had just left the fortress was shocked by the scene outside and was speechless. The space outside the fortress was not the once extremely dark starry sky, nor was it filled with stellar debris. Under the fortress is a circular metal platform with a diameter of tens of thousands of kilometers, and at one end of the metal platform there is a straight road leading to the darkness in the distance. Just by comparing with the fortress, this road with a flashing silver reflection is several light years long. After all, the crew can no longer see the end of this road. The width of this metal road has reached thousands of kilometers. The 80-kilometer diameter of the fortress is like an Alto parked on a two-way 5-lane road. In the starry sky above this platform, there are white light spots arranged in a grid shape. These light spots are like chess pieces on a chessboard. The distance between each light spot is exactly the same. And there are thin white lines connecting these white stars. Every 10 minutes, these stars will flash from near to far. It is estimated that the distance between these stars is too far, and the propagation of light takes time. Where is this place? The crew member hurriedly pushed aside the crew members who had just passed through the hole and rushed to the interior of the fortress. At the same time, the scene he observed with his eyes has been shared by him through the mental network to the internal mental network of the fortress. Mingze, who was talking to the shipboard intelligence in the command center of the fortress, suddenly noticed this video in the mental network. After he opened this video, he stood up directly. Fortress, how are the scanning equipment and information collection equipment on the outside of the spacecraft repaired? Mingze shouted to the shipboard intelligence of the fortress. The repairs have been completed, Your Majesty. I am collecting external data for summary, the intelligence of the fortress said, and then transmitted the scene outside the spacecraft to Mingze's mind from a third-person perspective. Select the nearest one of these twinkling stars and zoom in, Mingze ordered through the mental linker. Suddenly, the picture in his mind began to move forward rapidly, and soon stopped in front of the star closest to the fortress. From the picture, it can be seen that this star is a normal white star. However, Mingze's face was full of shock at this time. He was shocked not by this star, but by the things outside this star. In the outer orbit of this star, there are 720 huge metal rings, which are rotating regularly around this planet. On average, there is a rotation cycle every 10 days, which is why the maintenance personnel can detect that the stars flicker once every 10 minutes. There are actually a large number of planets embedded in these metal rings of different diameters. On average, there are 12 planets of the same size embedded on the inner side of each ring, and these planets are wrapped in a layer of blue shield. In other words, each white star represents a star system, and each of these star systems has up to 8,640 planets. Each star and the 8,640 planets surrounding it form a system. At the two midpoints where each star ring intersects, that is, at the two poles of the star, there are 6 white beams extending to the surrounding stars. Although these beams are at some angles, when magnified to the distance between the two star systems, they almost become a vertical straight line, which is why they look as neat as a chessboard. After Mingze adjusted his perspective back to the fortress, he could see the layers of white stars in the sky. Around the platform where his spacecraft was docked, there were at least tens of millions of stars twinkling. This means that in the starry sky, there are tens of millions of such artificial star systems alone. And this is the data obtained after some stars are too far away and the light they emit has been blocked by other stars. Chapter 731, Space Technology. Mingze couldn't imagine what kind of civilization could build such a large-scale artificial star system. You know, it requires hundreds of millions or even billions of young stars to be arranged in a neat and uniform manner. After that, it is necessary to build super buildings around these stars that are comparable to the ring worlds that dozens of empires are currently unable to build. And that's not all. The 12 planets must be embedded in these huge rings around the stars without damage. As for the beams between the stars, Mingze estimated that they might be some kind of energy transmission system or a transportation system between star systems, similar to the wormhole channel of the Empire. These are not all. This civilization also needs to build a huge platform under the Imperial Fortress. This platform, which seems to have only docking functions, has a diameter of 10,000 kilometers. At one end of it, there is also an extremely long metal road of unknown length. Mingze couldn't imagine how much free time this civilization had and how abundant resources it had to build such a completely useless building in his opinion. However, when he looked down at the metal platform under the fortress, his pupils suddenly shrank. In the center of this metal platform of tens of thousands of kilometers, there was actually a spray-painted imperial logo with a diameter of several thousand meters. That's right, it's the symbol of the Sith Empire. Mingze opened his mouth in shock. For a moment, he thought that the Sith Federation had found him and was going to take him back. But it didn't seem like that, because they had been here for a long time, but no spaceship appeared around them, and they didn't receive any messages. Your Majesty, the propulsion system of the fortress has been repaired. We can move at sublight speed. Suddenly, the shipboard intelligence appeared and said to Mingze, "Well? Has the propulsion system been repaired? Start all the thrusters of the fortress and move along the metal road below." Mingze sat down in his seat after speaking. Now he wanted to see what was at the end of this road. Maybe this road was used to guide his direction. The heavy hull of the fortress began to slowly turn around, aiming about the metal road on the side of the platform and slowly accelerating. As the fortress continued to move forward, it was now galloping on the metal road like a car on a highway. But soon Mingze noticed something was wrong. The speed of the stars passing around the fortress was a little abnormal. And the metal platform behind him disappeared in a moment. "Fortress, how far have we just advanced?" Mingze asked the shipboard intelligence hurriedly. "The fortress's own distance recorder shows that we have just advanced 300,000 kilometers and sailed for 3 seconds, but when our observation system locates according to the surrounding star systems, it finds that we have advanced a distance of 1 light year. The shipboard intelligence seemed a little entangled with this contradictory data. But fortunately the Empire's research level on intelligence is already very high, and the shipboard intelligence did not crash because of this contradictory data. Is this the Chinese legend of shrinking the Earth into an inch? Mingze's face changed. This idiom only describes the situation that the fortress is facing now. But the other party must have mastered the technology to shorten the distance in real space. Now Mingze knows why the other party wants to build such a metal road. This metal road is simply a real highway. They only flew a distance of 1 light second, but in this universe, they have actually advanced a full light year. What kind of technology is this? This technology to shorten the distance in real space has far exceeded various jump methods. Although a physical road needs to be built, it can accelerate the spacecraft by 520,000 times. What a concept! The journey that originally took several hours to fly can now be reached in just a few seconds. Mingze couldn't imagine the technological strength of this civilization. The roads paved in his own territory alone have such technological content. The strength of the opponent's fleet. Mingze rubbed his brows. He didn't know whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. Obviously, the opponent teleported himself here when his warship was about to be destroyed by the stellar explosion. The opponent's teleportation technology is so powerful that it can ignore the huge energy generated by the stellar explosion, which reminds Mingze of the opponent's strength from the side. However, since the opponent rescued himself, he should not have any bad ideas about himself. Mingze comforted himself. As the fortress advanced for dozens of light years on this highway, a crossroads appeared in front of Mingze. Yes, that's right, a crossroads. The kind of crossroads with traffic lights. 4 cylinders thousands of kilometers high were hung with traffic lights that were almost as large as the fortress. Without thinking, Mingze knew that this highway must have been built by another Mingze. Only he from Earth could think of such a bad taste. Seeing that the roads leading to both sides were all red lights, the Imperial fortress continued to move straight along this road. After dozens of seconds, the fortress came to a huge spherical building that occupied Li Mingze's entire site. The so-called spherical shape was just the result of the fortress's scan. In Li Mingze's naked eyes, in front of him was a flat high wall extending to the sky. The building was so huge that although its surface was round, it was just a huge plane in Li Mingze's eyes. This road extended all the way to the inside of the spherical building, but Li Mingze did not see any doors or anything like that on the neat wall. However, he found several huge parking spaces on the side. After ordering the intelligence to park the fortress in these huge parking spaces, Li Mingze walked straight out of the command center. After passing through the long corridor and the guards beside the corridor, he walked out of the command center. Li Mingze's footsteps suddenly stopped. He had walked for so long just to the command center inside the fortress. How should he move in that giant building? Your Majesty, take the escort. Several officers trotted up from behind, followed by more than a dozen guards from the command center. No, with the enemy's technology, if they want to kill me, they need to wait until I'm alone. I'll go by myself, so it will seem more sincere. Li Mingze waved his hand, boarded the hovercraft beside him and drove towards the port of the fortress. In the port inside the fortress, there was already a single-person shuttle waiting. Chapter 732, The Final Meeting. However, the moment Li Mingze boarded the shuttle and flew out of the port, he disappeared, and the shuttle stopped at a loss after losing its controller. Where is His Majesty? The command center of the fortress was in chaos. They had just lost contact with Li Mingze. Try to use the neural network to contact His Majesty, a general shouted to the officer beside him. Sir, we can't find His Majesty in our mental network, let alone contact with His Majesty. The officer closed his eyes and felt it and replied bitterly. Just when everyone in the command center tried every means to find Li Mingze suddenly fell from mid-air onto a glass platform. When he raised his head and looked around, he found that he was no longer in the shuttle. Helplessly standing up and patting the non-existent dust on his body, Li Mingze began to look around. He was not panicked. After all, the only one who could teleport him away without knowing it should be the unknown existence that teleported out of the fortress. There was no scenery around. Outside the glass platform where he stood was an endless white space. The height, length and width of this space were unknown. Since everything was white and there was no obvious dividing line, it was difficult to tell where the boundary was with the naked eye. The glass platform under his feet seemed to be suspended in the air, and there was no support around. After an unknown amount of time, just when he began to get tired of the monotonous white space around him, a small black dot suddenly appeared in front of him. The small black dot seemed to be approaching him. As the distance between the two sides narrowed, Li Mingze finally saw the appearance of the small black dot. This was a completely black metal ball. There was no reflection on the metal ball. It seemed that some light-absorbing material was used. As the metal ball got closer and closer, Li Mingze began to feel that the size of the metal ball seemed a bit large. That's right, now with the scanner in the power armor, Li Mingze has deduced the approximate diameter of the metal ball. 1,000 kilometers. The metal ball stopped moving far away from Li Mingze. At this distance, Li Mingze could just see the original appearance of the metal ball and feel the pressure coming from it. This is the fear of people towards things that are too big. At this moment, dozens of small black dots suddenly split from the metal ball and flew towards Li Mingze. These black dots grew larger and larger as the distance got closer. When they were in front of Li Mingze, they were already the size of a basketball court. The black ball just stopped around Li Mingze and stopped moving. The original black metal ball suddenly changed color, and red light began to flash on its dark surface. Then a Sith Empire logo that Li Mingze was very familiar with appeared on the front of the metal ball, occupying most of the space of the metal ball. This logo stayed for 2 seconds, and then a giant face composed of red lights appeared in front of Li Mingze. Li Mingze was also very familiar with this giant face. It was exactly what he saw in the mirror every day. It's been 15,000 years. I've been waiting here for 15,000 years. The face on the black metal ball began to speak slowly. Its voice was transmitted to Li Mingze's ears through the small metal balls floating around him. No matter how the people of the Sith Alliance outside call me, whether it's the evil Sith, the devil, the destroyer, etc., I know that my civilization is the Sith Empire. There is no absolute good or evil in this world. The different perspectives of each person determine whether he sees things as good or evil. There is no clear distinction between good and evil, and I think I am neither evil nor kind. Everything I do is for all the creatures in this world, no matter how the other Sith empires outside evaluate me. I am silently contributing to this world in my own way. I am the emperor of the evil Sith Empire, Mingze, as they say. After the metal ball introduced itself, it looked at Mingze standing on the platform. At this time, Mingze's brain was already a little confused. What the hell was going on? He actually ran into the hands of the evil Sith Empire. But why didn't the evil Sith Empire kill him directly, but saved him first? Since we are enemies, why did you save me? Mingze looked up at the face on the metal ball in confusion. No, we are not enemies. I think I need to explain something to you, the face on the metal ball said to Mingze in a deep voice. What to explain? Mingze was a little confused. Could there be some hidden secrets? In these countless universes, there are many Sith empires, but we are the only real evil Sith. Many Sith empires burn, kill, and plunder in our name, and devour the territories of other universes where other Sith empires are located. Even worse, they turn Mingze from other Sith empires into slaves and held them in their hands. There is no doubt that the outside world has put all these things on our heads. Our Sith Empire is not what they described, Mingze in the metal ball continued in a deep voice. Oh? That means they have wronged you. In fact, you and your Sith Empire are good people. Mingze breathed a sigh of relief. If they were not wronged, it would be good, which means that he would not be in any danger. Yes. That's right, whenever we evil Sith arrive at a parallel universe, we will definitely destroy it completely. We will never leave a single person alive. We won't even take away a single brick or tile from this universe. We evil Sith bring only destruction. Endless destruction. The tone of the metal ball suddenly became angry, as if he was angry at those people outside for misunderstanding him. Hearing this, Mingze's neck suddenly felt cold. What a joke. After all this time, it turned out that this guy was dissatisfied with the Sith Empire, pretending to be him for not ruthlessly destroying those universes. Thinking of this, Mingze suddenly felt a sense of despair. Could it be that he, his Sith Empire, and Tianyi were going to be destroyed by this madman? I know what you are thinking. Are you thinking that I am a big devil or a pervert? Are you worried that your universe will be destroyed by me? Mingze in the metal ball suddenly raised the corner of his mouth and showed a smile. That's right, no one would be so crazy as to completely destroy an entire universe. And you said that you are doing it for the lives of the world, Mingze replied with a light spit. Chapter 733 The Cruel Truth. Before you say I'm a pervert, you need to understand one thing, that is, everything I do has a reason. Mingze in the metal ball chuckled twice. In all parallel universes, there has always been a main universe, from which new universes are constantly split. With the self-evolution of these universes, the differences between these universes gradually become larger and larger, and the different speeds of time in each universe have created this mysterious and colorful multi-universe dimension. I always thought that my Sith Empire was the origin of all universes, but later research showed that I was wrong. The universe I am in was split because a civilization tried to send a message to the future. The time of the split was exactly the moment you just arrived at the Sith Empire from Earth and woke up. Because the flow rate of my universe is much faster than that of other universes, when you just walked out of the Sith Star, my Sith Empire had already defeated the invading Zerg. When you met the Zerg, my fleet had already ruled most of the universe, and all civilizations trembled under my fleet. This universe did not stop my ambition. My desire became stronger and stronger, and soon I set my sights on other parallel universes. I want to occupy all parallel universes and make myself the king of space in an absolute sense. Let the empire stand at the top of all universes. However, with the emergence of new space disciplines, a large number of scientists have obtained a lot of new knowledge by studying different universes. At this time, a study caught the attention of Tianyi and me. The metal ball paused, looked at Mingze and listened to him carefully before continuing. After a long period of experimental verification, we have come to a conclusion, that is, the space containing our main universe and other parallel universes is like a box, and the volume of this box can expand infinitely, but there is one thing, that is, the energy in this box is constant. That is to say, when there was only one main universe, these existing energies could keep the universe running almost permanently. But when parallel universes began to appear one after another, the energy in this box began to be consumed continuously. These parallel universes did not come out of nowhere. Their formation consumes the energy in the box. Once the number of parallel universes is too large, the energy in this box will disappear completely, and at that time, the only thing waiting for the parallel universes and the main universe's destruction, all the universes in this box will be cleared until a brand new universe is regenerated, and the events that happened in this box will be repeated again. Parallel universes will continue to split out, and then all the universes will be destroyed together, and then new universes will be born, and it will go on like this indefinitely, and at this time, after tens of thousands of years of research, our scientists have finally found a way to prevent the apocalypse that will destroy everything. That is, we will destroy each of the parallel universes that have been split apart. Let these universes explode and return to their origins, turning into energy that is redistributed in the box. Every time a universe is destroyed, it means that the remaining universes can exist longer. And as the number of destroyed universes increases, the last remaining universe will operate almost forever. As the universe naturally expands, the resources within the universe will continue to appear with the expansion, until the day it truly dies. What we evil Sith do is to clear out these parallel universes that should not appear and get this universe back on track. In the last surviving main universe, an advanced civilization with extremely advanced technology will be born, which will break the box that has plagued the universe and enter the outside world, and those Sith alliances seem to belong to the good camp. They unite all the Sith empires they can find, and even artificially create parallel universes to expand the power of the alliance. They seem to be protecting the safety of these Sith empires and maintaining the stability of the multiverse, but they are actually the biggest executioners. The more parallel universes they create, the closer these universes are to collapse. Sooner or later, all the creatures in the universe will disappear together. Li Mingze in the metal ball was already a little angry when he said this. They don't know what they are doing at all. They are constantly accelerating the demise of the universe. Now the speed at which I destroy the universe can no longer keep up with the speed at which they create parallel universes, and the Sith Alliance is constantly blocking my fleet, so I have to create many clones disguised as evil Sith to attract the attention of the Sith Alliance. What we have been doing is for the sake of all the creatures. Once a civilization with technology that can break the barrier appears, the civilization in our universe will be completely liberated, and we no longer have to worry about being annihilated together because of too many parallel universes. Also, this box is just a metaphor. We call it an empty box in academic terms, and this theory is also called the empty box theory. Although we don't know what the world outside the empty box is like, there is no doubt that there must be a wider world outside the empty box. Li Mingze on the metal ball fell into longing. So, why did you save me? Li Mingze standing on the glass platform asked puzzledly. I can say that the universe you are in is the real main universe, and you will carry the hopes of all our parallel universe Sith empires and civilizations. I hope you can become the super civilization that leads the main universe civilization out in the end, Li Mingze in the metal ball said to Li Mingze with a straight face. Why don't you do it yourself? You know that the technology of your Sith Empire is far stronger than mine. Li Mingze frowned and said puzzledly. There is no reason why the Sith Empire with such advanced technology should not directly occupy the main universe. Is there any conspiracy? But with the strength of his own empire, he has no way to deal with the conspiracy of the other party. No, the other party does not need a conspiracy to destroy him. Ha ha ha, I have this idea, but unfortunately I am dead. What you see now is just the artificial intelligence I set up. It has been meticulously executing my orders before my death to destroy all parallel universes. If you didn't happen to come to the universe we are about to destroy and detonated so many stars to attract our attention, the program to meet you would not even be started. Li Mingze in the metal ball sighed. Chapter 734 Leaving. You mean you're dead? Li Mingze asked in disbelief. You know, with the technology the Empire has now, he might even be able to achieve immortality. The technology of this evil Sith Empire far exceeds the technology the Empire has mastered, but their Emperor Li Mingze is dead. And it can be seen that the cause of death of this Li Mingze is definitely not an accidental death, otherwise there would not be this artificial intelligence to replace him. At this time, Li Mingze on the metal ball slowly said, Yes, I know what you are thinking. Do you think our technology can make us almost immortal? Li Mingze nodded. Li Mingze on the metal ball chuckled and continued, I thought so at the beginning. I naively thought that my wives and I could obtain eternal life, but when we reached the age of 1,048,536, I gradually began to feel that I was inexplicably weak. This feeling of weakness does not come from my body. No matter how I switch to a young and strong body, this feeling of weakness will occur. It was not until 5 years later, after unremitting research by scientists, that the reason for my weakness was found. That is, the density of my soul is constantly weakening. Not only me, all people who have reached this age have begun to experience the same phenomenon as me, and my wives are no exception. According to scientists' predictions, at this rate of decline, the end of our lives will only be 1,048,576 years old. Even if I summoned all the scientists in the Empire to find a solution, it would be of no avail. With 20 years left before my death, I spent all the resources of the Empire to build this universe-cleansing agency. Its existence has only one meaning, and that is to destroy one universe after another under the leadership of artificial intelligence and bring the world back on track. Li Mingze frowned and spoke slowly. But have you ever thought that maybe the universe will continue to split and eventually all perish, and the whole world will start over again, which is the right track for this world? What you are doing is just interfering with the normal operation of this world. Maybe this world exists in a cycle, and there is a beginning only after destruction, Li Mingze retorted loudly. There is a contradiction between your question and my program and setting. Li Mingze and the metal ball suddenly began to stutter, and the occasional freezes were very obvious. Obviously, in order to ensure that this artificial intelligence can resolutely execute Li Mingze's orders, he did not give this intelligence too high self-analysis ability. All it did was just the response method that had been calculated long ago in its memory bank. The evil Sith Empire used all its computing resources to calculate for 20 years, and calculated all the things that might happen in the next hundreds of millions of years, and set up response plans. At the same time, it could make it run perfectly with this low-level intelligence. But now what Li Mingze said is in conflict with the most important task in its core code, eliminating other universes to get the world back on track. What Li Mingze said was not wrong. What if the normal path of the universe is that parallel universes are constantly splitting out, and finally dying together and becoming the initial state to start again? This artificial intelligence that preserves Li Mingze's memory began to fall into a logical loop. All the computing units in its body were running frantically, as if trying to calculate the answer to this question. But this question is too profound. After all, it involves the meaning of the existence of the universe. A fatal error has occurred in the calculation, the program has begun to crash, and the stability of space has been destroyed. Start the ultimate program. With the alarm sounding through the sky, the world around Li Mingze suddenly turned red. Then, before he could react, his body disappeared in the room just now and returned to his shuttle. Li Mingze, who had recovered from the transmission, hurriedly controlled the shuttle to fly towards the spacecraft. At this time, the black sky that was originally like a normal starry sky suddenly became as bright as day, and the entire starry sky instantly turned white. The huge building in front of the fortress suddenly began to move, and the metal channel connecting the building began to be twisted and torn apart bit by bit by the huge force. After a moment, the metal road under the fortress had broken apart, and various fragments scattered around in disorder. The building in front of the fortress was also getting farther and farther away from the fortress, flying forward. Quick, salvage the metal road fragments below immediately. Li Mingze's eyes suddenly flashed, and he thought of something and shouted at the fortress. After receiving the order, the fortress immediately shot out hundreds of tractor beams from the bottom to tract a large number of fragments and drag them to the fortress's cargo hold. At the same time, various drones also flew out of the fortress and flew towards the surrounding debris. Li Mingze nodded with satisfaction and controlled the shuttle to return to the interior of the fortress. Ignoring the dense drones in the port, he returned directly to the command center of the fortress. Your Majesty, we have scanned a large range of space-time collapse in this universe. The space-time collapse seems to be converging to our location. It is expected that the space-time collapse will reach our surroundings in 30 hours. An officer turned and shouted to Li Mingze to report. Li Mingze's face turned serious. The situation was a little serious. There was no doubt that the collapse of time and space must be due to the fact that he had crashed the artificial intelligence of the Sith Empire. Now he regretted his bad mouth. He should have listened to the story and taken the things he was given and left. He had to discuss the right path of the world with an artificial intelligence. Now, I'm afraid he will be left here. Just when Li Mingze and others were thinking about how to leave this space, their warships suddenly disappeared. Some drones that were carrying debris suddenly lost the signal of the fortress and stopped in confusion. At this time, the star system where the spiral federal parliament was located was the star system that was detonated by them. Countless asteroids floated in space in disorder. The aftermath of the star explosion had receded, and all the planets and man-made buildings in the entire star system had become these asteroids. At this time, a huge battleship and 40,000 much smaller battleships suddenly appeared in an empty airspace. Mingze and the officers in the command center looked at the asteroids floating around them in dumbfoundedness. They couldn't understand why. They were just thinking about how to escape, and the next moment they found themselves in an unfamiliar asteroid belt. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 735, The End of the War, Part 1. Your Majesty, our mental network has reconnected to the White Dwarf-class fleet, and the Empire network has also reached its limit. We should have returned to the original universe. An officer looked up and said to Mingze. Mingze showed a look of surprise. He didn't expect that the artificial intelligence of the evil Sith would actually teleport him and others back in the end. Moreover, he originally thought that those White Dwarf-class battleships had been destroyed in the impact of the stellar explosion, but he didn't expect that they were also rescued by the evil Sith Empire and sent back with him. At this time, Mingze didn't know that he and others had been in the evil Sith universe for less than a day, and a full 6 months had passed in the original universe. This half-year was all spent on inter-universe transmission. It seemed that the fortress arrived in another universe instantly, but it took a lot of time to cross the void between universes. At that time, the stellar explosion caused the Empire to lose contact with the fortress and the White Dwarf-class fleet directly. Originally, Tianyi and others thought that the armor of the fortress should be able to withstand the impact of the stellar explosion, not to mention that Mingze used an advent substitute to go to the fortress. Therefore, no one was worried about Mingze's safety. The worst that could happen was the loss of a fleet. But who knew that when the entire star system calmed down, Mingze and the entire Imperial fleet disappeared. Their mental linkers were all offline. They could no longer be found in the Imperial mental network. Not only that, Mingze's body did not show any signs of waking up. Logically speaking, even if the fortress where Mingze was located was destroyed, Mingze should have woken up from his body. Tianyi and Eva, who were at a loss, immediately sent a large number of warships to search this star system. At the same time, the Imperial fleet launched an all-out attack on the Federation, and covered the entire process with heavy firepower, without taking prisoners or considering the wounded. Half a month later, the search warships composed of hundreds of millions of spacecraft found nothing. They did not even find a piece of armor on the fortress. It was as if the Imperial fleet had never existed. Tianyi and Eva fell into a frenzy. Mingze's disappearance again made them lose their minds. On the day the search ended, Tianyi directly ordered a change in the Imperial fleet's combat strategy. When encountering a star system with slightly stronger resistance, all planets will be destroyed directly. When encountering a planet with strong resistance on the ground, orbital bombing will be carried out directly. Regardless of whether there are other people on the entire planet, all of them will be burned into crystals by orbital bombing, leaving no one alive. The Empire is now pursuing the three-light policy of burning everything, looting everything, and killing everything. If you surrender voluntarily, you can still be treated as a slave, and any resistance will cause the people of the Federation to suffer a catastrophe. However, the officers who are carrying out a mission do not have too much psychological pressure. After all, these civilized races have all kinds of appearances, and in the eyes of the Imperial people, they are not regarded as the same kind. In this way, the speed of the Empire's advancement has greatly increased. There is no other reason. After all, the resisting planets are the majority. This also leads to the fact that the Imperial fleet basically blows up all the planets in this star system into asteroid belts every time it arrives. Although it seems a bit wasteful, the planets that have been blown into asteroid belts are unexpectedly more conducive to development. Therefore, the Imperial fleet does not know what mercy is. The highest record is that the Empire even pushed the offensive line forward by a distance of 100 light-years in one day. Under the crazy attack of the Empire, the remaining warships of the Federation were soon lost. The Federation had no power to fight back against the huge fleet of the Empire. In addition, the number of bee swarms has exceeded 10 trillion. The fleet of the Federation was basically swallowed up by the swarms as soon as it appeared. Faced with such a strong enemy, the member states of the Federation regretted it very much. Why didn't they surrender obediently at the beginning? They had to pit the enemy. They directly used stars to blow up the opponent's main fleet. It is estimated that there should be some important figures in the fleet, otherwise the Sith Empire would not have taken such a cruel action. But it was too late to regret. The Empire's fleet had occupied half of the Spiral Federation. There were not many warships stationed in the remaining half of the galaxy. It was only a matter of time before it was completely captured. Helplessly, the advanced civilizations of the Federation could only start building the Ark fleet like Li Ming's did at the beginning, planning to flee to other galaxies with all their belongings. Even if the Empire chased them, they could continue to run away. Anyway, it was better than waiting to die in the same place. Tianyi didn't know what the other party was thinking. She just found that it was easier to fight later. Basically, the Imperial fleet could take over every star system. There was no resistance, no struggle, and even no survivors. It seemed that all the Federation people had withdrawn. In this way, when Li Mingze's fortress and the White Dwarf fleet reappeared, this spiral galaxy had basically fallen into the hands of the Empire. The only thing left was a small star cluster composed of thousands of star systems. This star cluster was the last place for the Federation to survive. However, after receiving the information that the Imperial Fortress and Li Mingze were back online on the mental network, Tianyi gave up the plan to attack this star cluster and directly projected it into the fortress. Before Li Mingze could react, he felt a beautiful figure throwing himself into his arms. Tianyi, who was reorganized using molecular robots, hugged Li Mingze's waist and almost cried. Eva, who had just arrived, was much calmer. She stood by and watched the two people hugging each other quietly. It would be better to let the big sister take the hug. She just watched quietly. The staff and officers of the command center turned their heads hurriedly and dared not look directly. I'm back now. Li Mingze touched Tianyi's hair. He knew that his death in energy form last time had a huge impact on Tianyi and others. You are not allowed to go to the battlefield in person in the future, Tianyi said and stood up from Li Mingze's arms. Okay, I won't go to the battlefield in person in the future. Li Mingze was also a little nervous now. Fortunately, the evil Sith Empire had no ill will towards him, otherwise he would have died in another universe by now. You know, the Empire has the technology to extract souls. If he died in the hands of the evil Sith, he would have no chance to use the loophole to be reborn. But this time he still gained something, at least he picked up a lot of fragments. Tianyi, we got a lot of good things this time. You immediately order the scientists of the Empire to gather together and prepare to concentrate scientific research forces to crack the possible technologies contained in it. Li Mingze suddenly remembered something and showed a happy look on his face. Chapter 736 The Center of the Universe. Time goes back to not long ago, when the space where the evil Sith Empire was located just began to collapse. The artificial star systems that were originally arranged stably suddenly disappeared one by one, accompanied by the collapse of space. These star systems are actually the main battleships of the evil Sith Empire. They usually hang in the space to provide energy for the stability of the space. That's right, this space, which is as big as several galaxies, was completely built by the evil Sith Empire. It is independent of all universes and forms a system in itself. After Li Mingze crashed the artificial intelligence of the Sith Empire, the artificial intelligence directly started the ultimate program. The so-called ultimate program is that all the troops of the evil Sith Empire are dispatched to launch a devastating attack on the known universe. This attack will continue until all the Imperial warships are sunk. After setting the destination, the fleet of the evil Sith disappeared one by one from the space they built and flew to the universe they knew had not been destroyed. In fact, there are not many Imperial citizens in the evil Sith Empire now. After Li Mingze died in this empire, his wives also died with him. Tianyi and Eva, who had lost the meaning of living, also deleted their programs and died with Li Mingze. The entire evil Sith's human-making organs were all closed, and the entire society began to rely on citizens for natural reproduction. However, due to the excessive genetic modification of citizens by the Empire, the fertility rate of the Empire was extremely low. After many years, the number of citizens in the Empire became fewer and fewer. When Li Mingze came to this space, there were less than 10 million citizens of the evil Sith. Therefore, even if these people wanted to stop the suicide attack of the Imperial fleet, they had no way to do it. Artificial intelligence had taken over everything from them. Soon after, In the universes that had been explored by the evil Sith Empire, a number of warships the size of star systems appeared in the void and flew towards the core of these universes. The PX G99914 universe is a universe that has joined the Sith Alliance. As one of the members of the Sith Alliance, a large number of space wall detectors are deployed in this universe. The purpose of these detectors is to prevent the evil Sith Empire from sneaking into this universe directly. But even if they had detectors, it was useless. The warships of the evil Sith appeared in this universe so brazenly. When the space-time wall of the universe was opened, the detectors scanned the abnormality, but when the Alliance fleet arrived, the warships of the evil Sith had already disappeared. These star system-class warships that were sent to various universes were not for fighting against the civilizations in these universes. Their mission was extremely special, that is, to completely destroy these universes. The members of the Sith Alliance, that is, the various Mingzes, suddenly discovered that the evil Sith Empire had changed its tactics. They changed their previous steady and cautious approach and actually directly scattered all the warships to various universes. The alarm signals from the various universes they joined all indicated that all these universes had been attacked by the evil Sith Empire. What on earth does this evil Sith Empire want to do? Li Ming slapped the table in dissatisfaction. He really couldn't understand what the evil Sith Empire meant by sending only one warship to each universe. Did it look down on them? I feel like this might be a conspiracy by the evil Sith Empire. If we send all our forces to chase these warships, then there's no doubt that they'll have an opportunity to take advantage of it. By that time, the evil Sith will be able to defeat us one by one. Another Li Ming stood up and analyzed. Haha, but unfortunately, we've seen through his plan. We only sent out the reserve and civilian fleets to encircle and suppress these evil Sith fleets, while our main forces stayed put and never gave them any chances. Another Li Ming stood up. Those sitting there were all Li Ming's himself. It can be said that they knew exactly what they wanted to do. There must be something wrong with the abnormal situation. If they did this themselves, they would definitely arrange a series of chain schemes behind it. But unfortunately, they didn't know that the evil Sith Empire that had activated the final program was like a nuclear power that pressed the button on a briefcase. Countless nuclear warheads had already flown to the enemy's territory. At this moment, they would not care about their own safety. The battle had reached the last moment. These evil Sith warships that entered various universes changed their normal state. They did not meet the warships that came to encircle and suppress them. They chose to dodge instead of fighting. These warships took advantage of their strong defense and rushed towards the core of each universe without fighting back or scolding. After a few days, the people in the Sith Alliance felt something was wrong, because the actions of these warships were too weird. Not only that, there was something wrong with the direction the other party was running towards. The other party actually rushed directly to the core of their universe. As these evil Sith ships continued to move forward, they soon reached their intended destination, the center of the universe. If we talk about what the center of the universe is, we can use two huge whirlpools to describe it. The two huge whirlpools, one above and one below, slowly rotated in two different directions. In this spectacular whirlpool that may have a span of tens of trillions of light years, the whirlpool above is an absolute black without any light emitting. This black is a bit dazzling against a bright background of the nebula. Below this black vortex, that is, on its back, is a vortex emitting dazzling white light. If time is accelerated, you can even see rotating star systems being spit out from this vortex. These star systems are still in a very primitive state. The planetary systems in the star systems have not even formed yet. The only ones are the stars that have just lit up. This super spectacular double vortex is a special celestial body that exists at the core of all universes. The black vortex above it is composed of a supermassive black hole, which continuously absorbs the surrounding galaxies. Like the white vortex, if time is accelerated, you can see that one galaxy after another is swallowed by this black hole. These galaxies are already extremely old galaxies. It is unknown how long they have existed, and they may be close to the age of this universe. Things will turn into the opposite when they reach the extreme. After absorbing enough mass, they will re-eject this mass, which forms two super wonders of different colors and properties. All the galaxies in this universe can be said to be in reincarnation. After the old galaxies are swallowed by the black hole, the white hole on the other side reaggregates these substances and ejects them again. Chapter 737 Destroy in the Universe. As these new galaxies turn around the periphery, they will be recycled by the black hole again. This process may last for a very, very long time, so long that even civilizations cannot detect it. This is why scientists on Earth have concluded that the universe is expanding. The distance between the star systems is constantly increasing, but that is because the galaxy has moved from the original white hole exit to the outside of the sphere that makes up this cosmic system. However, the matter ejected by the white vortex is greater than that absorbed by the black hole. These substances all come from the energy distributed in the box. It can also be considered that this is the expansion of the universe. It is an indisputable fact that the volume of this system will become larger and larger as the amount of matter increases. At this time, the warships of the evil Sith Empire came to the top of the black hole of this super system. If Mingze were here at this time, he would definitely open his mouth in surprise. After all, the Empire's technology has not yet reached the level of being able to explore the center of the universe. But it doesn't matter. The evil Sith Empire specially broadcast live for Mingze. Mingze, who had just returned to the palace, received a communication from somewhere unknown. When he turned on the communication, what appeared in front of him was the super spectacle of the center of the universe. However, this scene was recorded in advance, because the warship of the evil Sith Empire has come to a place very close to the black hole. Here, all light cannot escape the gravity of the black hole and is sucked into the body of the black hole. Except for this spaceship, the outside world is only pitch black. Even the appearance of the warship cannot be seen here, because there is no light to reflect back. What is this for? Mingze looked at the simulated hologram on the screen with some doubts. He thought that Tianyi was playing a trick on him. After all, it was not without precedent. But then he couldn't laugh anymore, because a line of subtitles appeared on the screen. Countdown to the Universe Destruction Program. 5 4 3 2 1. Start. As the subtitles disappeared, the Imperial warship in the picture suddenly plunged into the black hole. Fuck. Mingze couldn't help but burst out a swear word in amazement. You know, this is a super black hole at the center of the universe, and this evil Sith warship actually drilled into it. Just when he was curious about what happened, the size of the black hole suddenly began to increase. Soon it began to expand to the surroundings at an unscientific speed. Logically speaking, if calculated according to the proportion and propagation speed in the picture, the speed of this black hole's expansion far exceeded the speed of light. This impossible thing actually appeared in front of his eyes. As the black hole continued to expand, the surrounding river systems were gradually sucked into its body. These river systems were deformed under the pull of huge gravity, and all solids were directly stretched and began to rotate rapidly around the black hole until they slowly reached the speed of light and were converted into energy. At this time, Mingze discovered that the speed of time flow in this black hole was actually far faster than the normal flow rate of this universe. But then he knew the reason. As the black hole expanded, the mass inside the black hole finally exceeded the limit that the universe could bear, and the huge gravity directly tore the space and time apart. From the core of the black hole, the entire space began to collapse little by little, and everything began to disappear with the collapse of space and time. Mingze knew that the black hole was just the initiator, and the real force was definitely the evil Sith warship. It didn't know what equipment it carried, but it could actually tear the space of the entire universe apart, and this process was irreversible. In other words, the universe in the picture in front of Mingze could not escape the fate of annihilation, and the creatures in this universe would also be transformed into energy in the box along with the dissipation of the universe. Mingze now knew how the evil Sith Empire destroyed these universes. This method was too cruel. But even so, he could not do anything. If he was given a chance to start over, he swore that he would never discuss the right track of the universe with artificial intelligence again. Now, he could only watch these universes being destroyed by the evil Sith Empire, and watch all the creatures in these universes being transformed into the most primitive energy. Damn it, Mingze smashed the table angrily. At this moment, the picture suddenly disappeared, replaced by a huge tree diagram. He looked closely and found that the main universe he was originally in was floating at the root of the tree diagram. Of course, he could only know this because there were annotations next to it. And along the trunk upwards were parallel universes that split from the main universe. The farther the universe was from the main universe at the root, the later it was separated from the main universe. At this time, the fruits on the tree, that is, the parallel universes, suddenly went out. But the extinguishing of this glowing universe icon was just the beginning. Then, The glowing fruits began to go out and disappear one by one. Li Mingze understood that these were the universes that had just been destroyed by the warships of the evil Sith Empire. As the fruits continued to go out and disappear, gradually only half of the original number of fruits were left on the tree, still flashing. Li Mingze knew that this meant that more than half of the parallel universes had been destroyed by the warships of the evil Sith Empire during that period of time. These parallel universes turned into energy and returned to the box, and the remaining ones were probably parallel universes that the evil Sith Empire had not discovered. Li Mingze sighed, and he suddenly didn't know how he should go on in the future. Should he inherit the unfinished business of the evil Sith Empire, or continue to develop normally as before? Tianyi, I don't know what I should do. Li Mingze lay down on the chair and rubbed his temples. There are two paths before him now. One is to destroy all parallel universes like the evil Sith Empire, to buy enough life for the main universe, so that the Empire can develop technology that can break the box. Or he can occupy this universe step by step as originally planned, and then try to establish colonies in other parallel universes. Your Majesty, I suggest you choose the first one, Tianyi suddenly said, and the words of the evil Sith Empire made her suddenly very touched. Since all things in all universes will eventually perish, why not sacrifice them to ensure the development of the Empire? Of course, she also has selfish motives. After all, Li Mingze of the evil Sith Empire died, and she doesn't want the Empire to follow the old path of the evil Sith Empire. She wants the Empire's technology to be enough to break the barriers of dimensions and let Li Mingze gain true immortality. Chapter 738 Space Folding Technology. During the time when Li Mingze and Tianyi were discussing, the fleet of the Spiral Federation took the elites of various civilizations and all useful materials and equipment on the Ark and jumped into the hyperspace. Their goal was obvious, which was another river system not far from the Spiral River System. So far, the Spiral River System has officially become the property of the Empire, and there is no one in the entire river system that can challenge the Empire. The reconstruction and colonization of this river system began to proceed in full swing, and countless Imperial citizens were transported from the Empire to the Spiral River System on colonization ships. Considering that there are too many river systems that may be ruled in the future, the Empire renamed the names of various river systems. The river system where the Empire is located is called the Empire No. 1 River System, and the Spiral River System is the Empire No. 2 River System. According to the time of the Empire's rule, the next time the Empire captures it, it will become the Empire No. 3 River System. As the development of the river system is on the right track, the Empire began to study the fragments salvaged from the space of the evil Sith Empire. These fragments are different from what Li Mingze imagined. They do not have super strength. Their strength is not even as strong as the Zen crystal discovered by the Empire. However, these fragments contain a large number of unknown equipment, which will be the stepping stone to unveil the mystery of the evil Sith Empire's technology. Imperial Calendar Year 2800. It has been more than 200 years since the Empire occupied the Empire No. 2 River System. In these 200 years, the Empire has completely digested this new river system, and basically all the planets that can be colonized have been colonized by the Empire. Relying on the original Spiral Federation wormhole high-speed channel, the new high-speed network has also been built by the Empire. The infrastructure construction in this river system is almost catching up with the Empire's homeland, the Empire No. 1 River System. The Empire's fleet, which originally suffered some heavy losses in this battle, has been completely restored. Not only that, the number of all types of warships in the Empire has doubled compared to before the war. The number of White Dwarf-class battleships alone has reached an astonishing 100,000, and the number of ordinary Zeus-class battleships has reached 20 million. The drone swarm exposed in the first battle has reached 20 trillion, and the dense drone formation can already cover one side of a star. In the Imperial Royal Research Institute, several scientists looked at the floating chip in front of them with great joy and hugged each other excitedly. The efforts of more than 200 years have not been in vain. This technology has finally been researched by them. Quick! Call His Majesty, the scientist shouted loudly to the assistant beside him. After a while, Li Mingze followed the assistant and others to the laboratory. Is this the final result of your research? Show it to me. Li Mingze stood beside the test bench and nodded gently. His eyes never left the floating chip on the test bench. He knew that this chip represented a new era. If the Empire completely mastered this technology, No one in this universe would be able to stop the Empire's footsteps. The scientists turned on a switch on the console with a serious look, and at the same time reached out and placed an apple on top of the chip. As soon as the scientist let go, the apple actually fell into the chip that was less than 1 millimeter thin and disappeared. That's right, this chip was made using the space folding technology that the Empire had just developed. The technology in the fragments obtained by the Empire from the evil Sith Empire has also been cracked by the Imperial Research Institute. These fragments contain a number of new technologies, that is, the legendary space folding. This technology can be used to create a folded space that can store a large number of items, and it can also fold the space within a certain distance, greatly shortening the distance between 2 points. This technology brings about a technological revolution. When the space folding technology is successfully cracked, the Empire's fleet will be the first to undergo a transformation. The size of a battleship is no longer the only criterion for measuring the combat effectiveness of a battleship. The original destroyer-sized volume can accommodate the equipment on the battleship. Of course, from the information he has learned so far, due to technical limitations, the larger the folded space volume, the higher the cost required. Therefore, the folding space technology that the Empire first applied will only double the space. In other words, the original Zeus-class battleship can accommodate more weapons and equipment. The crew lounge that was once cut off to save space has reappeared in the battleship. A large number of space-occupying equipment and materials have found a new home, and the Empire's warships will all be returned to the factory for re-upgrade and transformation. At the same time, because material science has reached a bottleneck, it is difficult for the Empire's warship armor to increase its strength unless the size of the warship is continuously expanded. However, this will greatly reduce the flexibility of the warship and will also cause the cost of the warship to rise sharply. Therefore, Mingze concluded that in addition to special-purpose motherships, future warships must be developed towards miniaturization. Advanced space folding technology means that these warships no longer need to be too large. Similarly, because material science has reached a bottleneck, the next warship will rely on continuously enhanced shields to strengthen its defense. In the case that the space inside the warship can be expanded almost infinitely, the Empire's warships can continuously stack shields to enhance the shield's absorption limit. Without thinking too much, Mingze turned his attention to the chip again. At this time, the chip did not show any abnormality after swallowing an apple. A scientist wearing gloves reached out and took the chip off and placed it on a tray beside him. Soon the weight of the chip was calculated. The weight has not changed at all, the scientist said happily after looking at the numbers displayed on the screen. The scientist then turned the chip upside down, and an apple fell from it onto the test bench and was dragged up by the suspension beam and floated in the air. Scan the readings of the apple, the scientist said solemnly to the intelligent brain. The data scan is complete, and there is no abnormality. After a while, a green light swept across the apple floating in the air. And a female voice came from the speaker in the laboratory. Very good. Put this technology into mass production as soon as possible. It doesn't matter even if the performance of the space folding is not as good as in the laboratory, Mingze applauded loudly. Once this technology is put into use, it will be the time for the Empire's expeditionary fleet to set off for the second time. Countless river systems around are waiting for the Empire to visit. The Empire's fleet will flatten all hostile civilizations in these river systems and turn these river systems into the Empire's territory. Chapter 739, Invasion of the Third River System. A few years later, the space folding technology has been mass-produced, and all the main battleships and ground forces of the Empire have been refitted. The Zeus-class battleships installed space folding devices on the ammunition depots, material storage compartments and engine rooms on the battleships, which saved half of the space in the entire battleship. The crew lounge that was originally deleted was reinstalled, and more shield generators and small reactors were installed for these battleships. In this way, the shield defense capability of the Zeus-class battleships was increased to 3 times the original. The crew lounge and the doubled hangar enable these battleships to have the ability to perform tasks independently. The Hive mothership even uses this technology to increase its drone capacity to 8 trillion, which means that the Empire's existing 20 trillion Wasp drones only need 3 Hive motherships to accommodate them. A transport ship equipped with a space folding device can replace 2 ships. Similarly, a landing ship equipped with space folding can transport twice the number of troops to the ground at one time. The ground forces were also not left behind. First, The ammunition depots of the mecha tanks and other components that occupied a large volume were replaced with space-folding devices. The mecha tanks that were originally unable to carry people can now carry an additional 6 clone soldiers. In this way, the Empire no longer needs troop carriers to transport soldiers, and can directly rely on mecha tanks to transport soldiers. Space folding has directly raised the overall strength of the Empire to a higher level. Not only has the amount of ammunition carried by various weapons increased, but the shields of warships have generally increased by 3 times. More reactors in warships also make the weapons accumulate energy faster. After all the warships were replaced, Mingze waved his hand and formed a new Imperial Expeditionary Fleet. The number of the new Imperial Expeditionary Fleet reached twice that of the original invasion of the Spiral Federation. There was also an advance fleet that was sent to the periphery of another river system through teleportation, and then a portal was built to transport the main force through the portal. The only difference this time from the invasion of the Spiral Federation was that the advance fleet teleported 100,000 warships at one time. Following behind were 900,000 warships. These 1 million warships rushed directly into the interior of this new river system. The various civilizations that did not react were caught off guard by the Empire. The Empire took the opportunity to build a portal device in this river system. When the various civilizations in this river system communicated with each other and knew that there was an invasion of foreign civilizations, the Empire's portal had already stood at the outermost edge of this river system. In less than a week, the Empire's expeditionary fleet passed through the portal and arrived in this river system. In this river system named Empire No. 3, the Empire gave up its once steady and cautious tactics. 20 million Zeus-class warships and 100,000 White Dwarf-class warships were divided into 5 groups and went straight into the heart of this river system. Under the cover of the swarm, the cruisers and destroyers in the Empire continued to advance outward in a plane-like manner, with a portal as the core. The fleets of these civilizations were attracted by the Empire's main fleet at the beginning, and nearly 80% of the warships were sent out to prepare for a decisive battle with the Empire's 5 fleets. At this time, the fleet of bee swarms behind them had already pressed forward. Would the remaining fleet be a match for the bee swarms? No doubt. Facing the bee swarms that could instantly cover an entire planet, these civilizations had no power to fight back. The surrendered civilizations were fine, but the civilizations that did not surrender were turned into scorched earth wherever the Imperial fleet went. Anyway, the Empire does not need the manufacturing equipment and jewelry of these civilizations now, and the Empire does not need the population of these civilizations even more. Therefore, there would be nothing left wherever the Imperial fleet went. Even the surrendered civilizations would be put into hibernation chambers and let them spend the rest of their lives in the virtual world. Under the rapid offensive of the Imperial fleet, these civilizations were beaten back to their hometowns before they even had time to form a unified defense line to resist the Empire's attack. In less than 2 months, the Imperial fleet had wiped out all the civilizations that dared to resist in this river system. In less than 2 months, the Imperial fleet took over a brand new river system. The efficiency and speed under the dictatorship of the Sith Empire were so terrifying. If it were any other civilization with any constitution, it might be possible to argue endlessly just about the policy of racial destruction against these aliens. But these do not exist under Mingze's high-pressure dictatorship, and even within the government system, there are no small groups that can thwart his rule. Any individuals and groups with undue ambitions will be exposed in the mental network and eradicated by Tianyi. This also means that even if the Empire occupies more territory, the imperial family's rule over each river system is ironclad. This efficient political system, combined with the mental network, gives the Empire the terrifying potential to occupy the entire universe without an internal crisis. If it were a democratic country, it might fall apart after controlling a few river systems. There is no other reason. Once they are too far apart, the people in these river systems will have a desire for independence and freedom. Therefore, maintaining the smooth operation of a huge territory is inseparable from an efficient dictatorship. In future operations, the Empire will encounter fewer and fewer democratic civilizations, and the larger the territory, the less likely it is to be a democracy. The independent thinking of any race or planet may cause a democratic civilization to collapse instantly. So the only thing left is a military civilization, an imperial civilization, or a theocratic civilization that can suppress independence. The imperial civilization of autocratic rule, such as the empire controlled by Mingze, will be the most common form of civilization. And the theocracy is right behind it. The theocracy civilization that can brainwash the people is undoubtedly less likely to split. After incorporating the Empire's number 3 river system into its territory, the Empire began a new round of development. After occupying 2 river systems, the Empire's development capabilities have been greatly enhanced. And both river systems can replenish population and materials to this new river system. At the same time, since the Empire's fleet did not suffer too much loss, after a simple repair, they began to prepare to attack the Empire's number 4 river system. As for the Empire's number 3 river system, it will be developed in the process of attacking the number 4 river system, and will be prepared to provide blood transfusion for the development and construction of the Empire's number 4 river system. In this way, as the number of river systems controlled by the Empire increases, the speed of the Empire's occupation and development will also be greatly enhanced. The expansion speed of the Empire's territory will maintain a high growth trend before encountering a more powerful civilization. Chapter 740 Technology Bottleneck. The size of the Empire's fleet is proportional to the Empire's growing territory. If the 10 million Zeus-class battleships and 50,000 White Dwarf-class battleships originally owned by the Empire are regarded as one unit, then the Empire will build a unit of fleet every time it captures a new river system. As the Empire's territory expanded to the Empire's river system number 5, the Empire's river system number 6, the Empire's river system number 7, and the Empire's river system number 100, the size of the Empire's fleet has also snowballed. Correspondingly, the time required for the Empire's fleet to capture a new river system is getting shorter and shorter. In the later period, even the advanced fleet of the Empire's fleet can directly capture the enemy's entire river system as soon as it is teleported over. On the surface, the Empire's strength seems to be constantly increasing, and the number of the Empire's fleets is constantly doubling. But Li Mingze knows that the Empire is now in a very troublesome situation, that is, the Empire's technology seems to have reached a limit. Whether it is physics, chemistry, biology, etc., the Empire seems to have touched the ceiling of these disciplines. This is not a good thing. After all, Li Mingze knows that there are more powerful civilizations above the Empire, but the Empire is now trapped at the current level. The seemingly narrow crack in the ground is like a chasm that cannot be crossed. On the inner ring world of Shenzhou, a hemispherical building reflects a pale white light under the sunlight. White teardrop-shaped spaceships are constantly separated from the sleek shell and fly into the air. The meaning of the existence of this building is very simple, that is, it is used for meetings. In this super-large conference room building belonging to the Imperial Royal Research Institute, all the elite scientists of the Empire have gathered in this conference room. These scientists include all known subjects such as physics, chemistry, biology, astronomy and even psychology. And standing in the center of the conference room is the supreme ruler of the Empire, Emperor Li Mingze. As the Empire has touched the ceiling of each subject, all the research rooms and laboratories of the Empire have now come to a standstill. It is not that they do not want to conduct research, but that they have nothing to study. It seems that everything that can be discovered by them has been studied by the Empire, but these discovered technologies cannot piece together the technologies necessary for the next level. This situation attracted Li Mingze's great attention, which was the reason for this conference covering all subjects. Silence. Silence. Li Mingze clapped his hands at the messy venue. Instantly, the whole venue became silent, and all the scientists sat up straight and looked at Li Mingze standing at the southernmost end of the venue. You are all the pillars of the Empire's scientific community. I believe that everyone is clear and aware of the situation that the Empire has encountered recently. Li Mingze looked around at the scientists in the venue. These scientists are the best selected from the Empire's nearly trillion scientists. Whether in terms of knowledge or IQ, they are at the top of the Empire. This is why he gathered these people together to discuss. He alone could not come up with a solution. Your Majesty, the material science I am responsible for has reached a bottleneck. No matter how many times we try, we cannot synthesize materials with better performance, whether it is the materials used to conduct energy or the materials used to make armor. They have begun to stagnate and are still at the level of more than 100 years ago. A scientist raised his hand and stood up. We are the same. The supercomputer research I am responsible for has also hit a bottleneck due to materials science. Without new materials, it is impossible to research a supercomputer with stronger computing power. We are the same. The power of weapons can only be increased by expanding the size of the weapons, and there is no qualitative improvement at all. Our shield research is the same. We can only increase the shield's bearing limit by piling up the number of shield launchers, and we can't improve the shield's strength qualitatively. We are the same. In an instant, the venue fell into chaos again. Countless scientists began to complain. Their research has been stagnant for hundreds of years. Now scientists and researchers are too lazy to work. After all, no matter how busy they are, the research results are still the same. Research, when did it start to stagnate? Mingze frowned and asked these scientists. Your Majesty, roughly speaking, it should be 200 years ago when we just captured the spiral river system. A scientist thought about it and gave an answer. At that time, we began to feel that research had become somewhat difficult. The experimental results that originally took 10 days to obtain began to take longer, and as time went on, the speed at which we developed new technologies became slower and slower, and the addition of the mental network seemed to no longer work. 100 years ago, our research was completely stagnant, and we could not develop new technologies no matter what. The scientist sighed. The scientists around him nodded and agreed. Yes, that's it. It stagnated 100 years ago. Mingze reached out and touched his chin and fell into deep thought. Did the signs appear 200 years ago? The changes that occurred in the Empire after invading the Spiral Federation were nothing more than the beginning of the research on space-folding technology and the expansion of the Empire's territory by nearly one-fold. At the same time, the Empire's human creation system was fully activated, creating hundreds of billions of people for colonizing new river systems. If nothing unexpected happened, did the problem appear in these three aspects? Was it because the Empire began to study space-folding technology, or because of the expansion of territory or the increase in population? Headache. Mingze rubbed his temples, not knowing what to do. There is no way to find out the specific reason now. After all, the space-folding technology has been studied. Moreover, these river empires have completed the occupation, and trillions of people have been spread to various river systems. No matter which of these three is irreversible. Your Majesty, I think we may be able to get the answer from other civilizations. Suddenly, a scientist stood up and said loudly. Oh? What do you mean? Mingze looked at the scientist curiously. He had some impression of this person. It seemed that he was in charge of the graveyard of the Empire, that is, the scientists who were stuffed into the virtual world civilization. Your Majesty, I think we can completely observe the development of a civilization to explore what factors cause the bottleneck of our technology. The scientist showed a confident look. Chapter 741 Civilization Experiment. Oh? If you have any ideas, speak up. Mingze waved his hand, indicating that the scientist could speak freely. The scientist rubbed his hands, remained silent for a moment, organized his words, and then slowly spoke. Your Majesty, this method may be dangerous, but we can obtain valuable information about the laws of operation of the universe through this experiment. I just don't know if you are willing to give it a try. Mingze was confused by what kind of experiment was dangerous. Your Majesty, my plan is to divide 3 unknown river systems and artificially create 3 civilizations to put in. Let these civilizations develop rapidly with our secret help, and in the later stage let them obtain space-folding technology, artificial human technology and larger territory respectively. In this way, we can judge which of the 3 factors restricts our technological development by observing their growth. Even if it is not one of these 3 factors, we can definitely find clues through observation. The scientist clenched his fist and made a pinching gesture. Well, let me think about it. Mingze fell into thought. He was wondering whether it was worth taking out 3 river systems for experiments. After more than 200 years of continuous development, the Empire now has the territory of 200 river systems. Taking out 3 river systems for experiments is not a big problem for the Empire. But the danger of this experiment is that the Empire cannot completely control these civilizations. Once they develop to the point where their technology is about to reach a bottleneck like the Empire, they will undoubtedly pose a threat to the Empire. And the Empire has to cultivate 3 such civilizations by itself. The existence of 3 civilizations with the same technological level as the Empire is indeed dangerous. Even though the Empire has a much larger number of warships than their fleet, there is still a slight possibility of being overturned by the other side. After all, the Empire once defeated powerful enemies all the way. Now all this makes Mingze a little hesitant, not knowing whether he should start this dangerous experiment. Your Majesty, we must try it, otherwise if we continue to expand our territory, It will be even more difficult to recover in the future. A scientist thought of something and stood up to persuade. Tianyi, give me a feasibility report immediately. I want to know if it is really feasible. Mingze frowned and said to Tianyi, who was standing behind him. As you command, Your Majesty. Tianyi nodded and began to use computing resources to calculate some possible situations. Your Majesty, this plan is completely feasible. If we send observers into these civilizations to monitor them secretly and build more White Dwarf-class battleships at the same time, we can completely defeat them before the situation gets out of control. Tianyi opened his eyes and nodded to Mingze after a while. After getting confirmation, Mingze agreed to the plan proposed by the scientist. But at this time, the choice of 3 civilizations in this plan began to become a problem. Fortunately, the Empire has captured a large number of civilizations, and there are all kinds of civilizations. Soon, 3 civilizations with exactly the same genetic appearance as humans and suspected to be human offshoots were selected. The survivors of these civilizations were extracted from the tomb device by the Empire, and all their memories were directly erased. In order to facilitate and quickly conduct experiments, the Empire has prepared fictitious memories for them. In these fictitious memories, the people of these civilizations would think that they developed step by step until they went to space. The Empire invented thousands of years of history for them. Of course, these histories were modified based on the history of the Earth, and the credibility and details were very high. The Empire even built various ruins imitating ancient times for them, to make these histories more credible. In the middle of the Empire's territory, 3 river systems were completely cleared and preserved by the Empire. The civilizations in these 3 river systems have been defeated by the Empire and sent to the tomb device. The buildings and facilities of these civilizations have been found and leveled one by the Empire's engineering ships, as if these civilizations had never appeared. In addition, the wreckage of warships floating in space has also been thoroughly cleaned up by the Empire. Now this river system is like a brand new canvas for the Empire to play with. After a brief study, the Empire selected a birth point suitable for the development of each of the 3 civilizations. A planet built by the Empire, and faked to be built by the civilization itself, appeared at the birth point selected for these civilizations. At the same time, the brainwashed survivors of the civilizations were sent to the mother planets of these civilizations by the Empire while they were sleeping. Thousands of robots suddenly appeared on the empty streets of these planets, pushing the dormant pods in their hands to both sides of the street. After moving people dressed in different clothes out of the dormant pods, the robots began to put these people upright and in various postures. After being activated, these people will continue their actions directly, and the memories specially made for them by the Empire can just connect with the actions they are about to make. At that time, these people will not feel anything abnormal, but will just think that they have been distracted for a while. At the same time, the 3 candidates selected by the Empire to serve as emperors of these civilizations were also sent directly to the palaces of these 3 civilizations. Mingze, who saw all this through the holographic screen in the Imperial Palace, scratched his head. These scenes seemed familiar to him. Didn't he appear in the Imperial Palace strangely at the beginning? Thinking of this, he felt bad all over, and he began to doubt the authenticity of his existence. Could it be that he was also part of an experiment, and in fact his previous memories were all fictitious, and the Earth and the Sith Star were the products of a certain civilization experiment? Is the meaning of his existence also a social experiment conducted by a certain civilization that has encountered a bottleneck? He suddenly felt a chill on his back. He always felt that someone was always watching him through some means. Maybe everything he did was watched by others in the dark, and everything he did was just entertainment for others. Everything is possible. He even wondered if he was the protagonist in a TV series or movie shot by a super civilization? Or was he just a string of code in a game? Your Majesty, don't think too much. It's enough for us to do our best. Tianyi knew what Mingze was thinking. She walked to Mingze and touched his back. An unknown light flashed in her eyes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 742 Civilization Experiment. Beep, beep. Tang Hong opened his eyes in confusion, and a metal ceiling with golden patterns flashed in his hazy eyes. This strange ceiling made him sober instantly, and Tang Hong sat up and looked around. What he saw was a 50 square meter room. On the southeast walls of the room were huge curved floor-to-ceiling windows, and there were a pair of red curtains on both sides of the floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows were towering skyscrapers, and hovercrafts shuttled between the skyscrapers from time to time. Sometimes, spaceships with yellow flames rose from the city and rushed into the sky. The outer walls of the tall buildings were covered with various constantly changing holographic advertisements, and on the outer walls of some tall buildings, there was a woman in seductive clothes twisting her body wantonly. Tang Hong was shocked by the scene outside the window. All this only existed in his fantasy and movies and TV. As an ordinary otaku on Earth, he didn't expect that he could see such a sci-fi scene. Where am I? Tang Hong stood up from the big bed under him and stood on the floor in confusion. It was a little different from what he expected. The floor, which looked smooth and cold, felt soft and warm. Your Majesty, you are up. At this time, a maid in black and white maid clothes opened Tang Hong's door and walked into the room. Behind the maid were 4 humanoid robots with white shells. Each of these robots held a plate covered by a glass cover. The various delicacies and cakes on the plate were beautifully stacked together. The light steam caused a trace of mist to appear on the glass cover. Your Majesty, it's time for breakfast. The maid clapped her hands, and a set of tables and chairs immediately rose on the ground. Several robots opened the glass cover of the plate in their hands and placed all the delicacies on the table. Your Majesty, you must be very confused when you first came to the Empire. You must be a little hungry after sleeping for a long time. These are the breakfasts carefully prepared by the imperial chefs of the palace. Please enjoy them slowly. After you have your meal, I will explain to you everything you want to know. After the maid said this, she stood behind Tang Hong and helped him tie his scarf. The 4 robots also stood aside tactfully, with their hands behind their backs, quietly waiting for Tang Hong to finish his meal. Although he was confused, the food in front of him had already filled Tang Hong's brain. He was the hungriest when he just woke up, and now the only thought in his mind was to finish the breakfast in front of him. As for what was going on now, didn't they say that they would explain it after eating? He quickly stuffed all kinds of cakes into his mouth, picked up a pot of drink and poured it into his mouth, and Tang Hong's mouth made a puffing sound while chewing. These cakes made by the imperial chef were so delicious that they far exceeded Tang Hong's expectations. He swore that the best thing he had ever eaten in his life was these cakes in front of him. More than 10 minutes later, Tang Hong, who had finished all the food on the table, burped with satisfaction. He touched his round belly and smiled with satisfaction. Your Majesty, since you have finished your meal, I will explain it to you. My name is Ning. I am actually a super artificial intelligence. I have mastered the operation of the entire empire. In the days to come, I will assist you in ruling the entire empire. My loyalty to you is beyond doubt. The empire will reach the pinnacle of the universe under your leadership. Ning described the beautiful future to Tang Hong with a passionate tone. Tang Hong basically believed Ning's words without thinking. After all, he was a loser and had nothing worth peeping at. He was an ordinary student who had just graduated from college in his 20s. Not only did his parents die, but he had less than 1,000 yuan on his body and had not paid the rent for the house he rented this month. If someone really spent so much money to plot against his 1,000 yuan, he would have nothing to say. Moreover, the scenery outside the window did not look fake no matter how you looked at it. The tall buildings and the floating cars in the sky were so real. However, Tang Hong soon learned from Ning the basic situation of this empire called Taodi, Tao, Tai. This Taodi empire is currently just at the stage of stepping out of the planet, but the difference from the Earth where he originally lived is that this Taodi empire has already built an orbital elevator. Not only that, this empire has also made substantial progress in the research of superluminal speed. Soon this civilization will be able to break free from the constraints of the mother planet and begin to explore the new starry sky. And he, Tang Hong, became the emperor of this empire after a nap. This kind of shit luck actually happened to him. You know, he originally disdained this kind of plot that could only happen in novels, but when it really happened to him, he found that he couldn't calm down his excitement. Originally, when he read novels, he would put himself into the novels, and he was very disdainful of those protagonists who were startled at the beginning. If he was replaced by a time traveler, he would definitely not be so startled. Now he understands the feelings of these protagonists. If he is not rational, he even wants to take off his clothes and swing wildly to vent his ecstasy. Escorted by a group of guards, Tang Hong, dressed in a royal robe, boarded a small spaceship to prepare for his one-day tour of the Empire. When his royal spaceship took off, a woman dressed in a maid's outfit and with a very ordinary face walked out from the shadows on the side. The target has left the palace. The experiment is currently running normally and the target has not noticed any abnormalities. A message was transmitted to a building floating in the void of the Empire through the mental network. Received. Continue to lurk and secretly observe the progress of this civilization. After a while, the reply message was transmitted back to the woman's mind through the mental network. The woman nodded imperceptibly and turned around to push the cart in front of her and left the lifting platform. There are countless people like this woman in the entire Tianyi Empire. These clones were created to secretly monitor the operation and development of the experimental empire to ensure that the situation will always be under the surveillance of the Sith Empire. These observers are spread across all walks of life in the Tianyi Empire. Maybe an old lady basking in the sun on the side of the road is an observer sent by the Empire. It is also possible that the chairman of a certain supercorporation is also an observer sent by the Empire. These observers have infiltrated the entire Tianyi Empire's roots. And no matter how the Tianyi Empire develops, they can ensure that these observers can always grasp its dynamics and report to the Empire. Chapter 743. The Empire following the script. Well, add a civilization that is slightly stronger than the Tianyi Empire at this location. Also here, arrange a strong enemy for them. Here, prepare a relic for them, the kind that can improve the technology of the Tianyi Empire by 50 years. Also here, leave dozens of warships for the Tianyi Empire, the kind that are all damaged. In the headquarters of the Empire's civilization plan, Mingze pointed at the star map. If the people who had walked with Mingze to this day saw these data, they would find that Mingze was completely preparing to copy the old path that the Empire had taken. Mingze will pave the way for this civilization, allowing this civilization to take off as fast as a rocket. Although this may also take a very long time, the last thing the Empire lacks now is time. Even if the experiment takes hundreds of years, the Empire can wait patiently. The time limit set by Mingze for this experiment is a full 500 years, and he can accept it as long as it is within 500 years. After all, it takes time for a civilization to absorb ready-made knowledge. Not long after Mingze's order was issued, transport ships and construction ships flew to a star system not far from the Tianyi Empire. The mission of these construction ships is to completely recreate a civilization within a few days. The transport ships are carrying a large number of sleeping clones. These clones have been instilled with memories. After they wake up, they will directly engage in false work to maintain the operation of this civilization newly created by the Empire. There are also several batches of spaceships that set off at the same time as these construction ships. The goal of these spaceships is very simple, that is, to complete the layout of the ruins prepared by Mingze for the Tianyi Empire. Not only do you have to build a ruins building and then blow it up, the Empire also needs to make these ruins old, so that these ruins have the precipitation of time. These ruins also contain the scientific and technological information that the Empire has carefully prepared for the Tianyi Empire. After the Tianyi Empire obtains these materials, it will be able to bring their technology to a new level in a short period of time, at least to build a higher level of warships. Of course, although the Sith Empire gave the Tianyi Empire everything it could without reservation, the Empire's core material printing technology was not given to the three experimental civilizations. After all, this technology was too dangerous. It would be embarrassing if these civilizations accidentally turned the tables. In addition to these carefully prepared relics, Mingze also prepared super buildings such as damaged Dyson spheres and damaged ring worlds for the three civilizations. He ordered all novelists and historians in the Empire to cooperate through the mental network to create a complete history for the three experimental river systems. Based on this fictional history, the Empire built the relics and buildings that should be left at each node in history, and left scientific and technological information of the corresponding level in these relics and buildings. As long as the Tianyi Empire can fully develop all the relics, it will only take 300 years for them to raise the technology to a state close to the peak, and then they will truly participate in the experiment. Of course, technology is also indispensable to enemies. After precise calculations, the Empire designed enemies of different levels for the Tianyi Empire at various locations around it. These enemies also have a lot of technology and materials that the Tianyi Empire does not have. As long as the Tod Empire conquers these civilizations, it can directly obtain new technology and materials, just as easy as upgrading and fighting monsters. As for what people are worried about, what if this Tod civilization does not follow the path designed by the Empire? At this time, the Empire's observers lurking in the Tod Empire will be needed. For example, the first relic that the Tod Empire will find next will be accidentally encountered by a civilian spacecraft belonging to an observer's company. If the Empire wants the Tod Empire to fight a certain civilization, it will be even simpler. If the Tod Empire does not take action, can other civilizations take action first? Anyway, everything is under the control of the Empire. Time flies, and decades of time pass in a flash. The Tod Empire, which has long developed a superluminal engine, has established colonies in several surrounding star systems. The Tod Empire has also built its first real fleet, the Empire's first fleet consisting of 10 frigates and 5 destroyers. At this time, according to the script designed by Mingze, the Tod Empire will encounter their first enemy in the direction of development, a civilization with a similar military strength to his. But at this time, an accident happened. Tianyi, the emperor of the Tod Empire, suddenly changed the direction of the Empire's development. The territorial expansion of the Tod Empire suddenly stretched in another direction. If it weren't for the observers lurking inside the Tod Empire to confirm that there was no abnormality, Mingze would even doubt whether the other party had noticed anything abnormal. However, Mingze was also very troubled by the disobedient Tod Empire. The other party's change of direction means that the Empire must take the initiative to adjust its deployment. A few days later, a patrol ship of the Tod Empire accidentally flew to an unfamiliar star system. Don't think too much, the captain of this patrol ship is the observer from the Empire. After quietly changing the battleship data, the battleship successfully invaded the enemy territory prepared by the Empire for the Tod Empire. After the ship appeared, the warship stationed in this star system immediately rushed to the ship. After the patrol ship of the Tod Empire accidentally sent a communication that meant to start a war in the prophecy of this strange civilization, a fierce conflict broke out between the two sides. At the last moment, the battleship of the Tod Empire jumped into the hyperspace with its seriously injured body. At this time, Tianyi, the emperor of the Tod Empire, also learned about the existence of this civilization, and the civilization took the lead in attacking the Empire's battleships. According to his nature, if he didn't fight back, he couldn't be called a man. Soon, the fleet of the Tod Empire rushed towards this civilization under his leadership. Originally, according to the strength of the battleship, it was impossible for the Tod Empire to win this war. But who made the Tod Empire the protagonist designated by the Sith Empire? With the secret help of this experimental controller, it is definitely not a problem for the Tod Empire to win. When the battle is at its most intense, an ordinary Tod Empire officer will discover the opponent's weakness and make it public. The Imperial fleet that has discovered the weakness will use this weakness to directly defeat the fleet of this civilization. There is no doubt that the Tod Empire will obtain new technology, territory and materials. Chapter 744 Zeus Type 3 Battleship. 200 years passed in a flash. Under Mingze's watch, the Tod Empire slowly grew from a low-level civilization with only one planet to behemoth occupying an arm. Along the way, the Tod Empire defeated more than 10 civilizations according to the Empire's script and obtained a large amount of new technology and new materials from these civilizations. In addition to the civilization relics prepared by the Empire, the current technological level of the Tod Empire can be said to be close to the time when the Empire had not escaped from the main universe. The Tod Empire has just discovered a broken ring world. Once this ring world is repaired by them, the many technologies in the ring world will push the technological level of the Tod Empire to a new height. At this time, the Tod Empire will launch a war against the civilizations of the entire galaxy under the secret guidance of the Sith Empire until it completely takes over the galaxy. There are 2 other experimental civilizations in the galaxy with similar situations to the Tod Empire. The Empire used various methods to guide the 3 civilizations to develop exactly according to the Empire's script. Any development beyond the outline would be forcibly reversed by the Empire. For example, once again, the Tod Empire planned to bypass a certain civilization to develop the star zone next to it. At this time, the Sith Empire decisively detonated several stars in the star zone that the Tod was about to go to. The sudden danger forced the TOD Empire to change its development policy and set its sights on the civilization that blocked their development path. In the past 200 years, the Sith Empire took the opportunity to concentrate on digesting the 500 river systems it had just occupied. Space folding technology has also made breakthrough progress in the past 200 years, and civilian space folding technology has also been authorized to major companies. The citizens of the Empire can also enjoy the convenience brought by space folding technology. The once huge skyscrapers no longer appear in the Empire's new colonies, replaced by pure white slender towers. All of these towers use double the space folding technology, making the indoor space twice as large as before. The same is true for the Empire's hovercraft. From the outside, it looks like a small hovercraft that can only carry 2 people, but it has a trunk that can accommodate 2 people. People no longer need heavy backpacks when going out. Different levels of space folding technology, from 1 to 10 times, have been applied to bracelets of various brands. It is very common for a palm-sized bracelet to have the capacity of a handbag, and this bracelet is almost weightless, so you won't feel uncomfortable when wearing it. This is just civilian space folding technology. The space folding technology used by the Imperial Army can even reach hundreds of times the space. The most intuitive feeling is that the weapons of the Imperial infantry have been almost streamlined to the point where only the grip and the barrel are left, but the streamlined gun body has an alternative beauty. The power armor on the soldiers has also become much lighter and thinner. There is no way. The current space folding technology is so cheap that it can be used by almost all equipment. Logically speaking, even if the space folding technology is discovered, it is impossible to become so cheap that it can be used in a handbag in a short period of time, but it happened to be born in an empire where no scientific research can be carried out. In the absence of any other technology to research, all the scientific research resources of the empire were tilted towards the only technology that was not affected, space folding technology. In the first 100 years alone, nearly half of the scientists changed their jobs to become scientists specializing in space technology. You should know that the number of scientists the empire now has reached a full 1 trillion, and there are as many as 500 billion scientists studying space science alone. In addition to the bonus of the mental network, they can avoid repeated research. The research speed of space technology is like installing tens of thousands of thrusters, which is unimaginable. But the problem also came. After 200 years of crazy research, space folding technology has actually reached its ceiling. After reaching a space expansion of 1,024 times in the laboratory, scientists found that they could no longer improve the performance of the space folding equipment. The maximum space that the space folding equipment can expand is fixed at 1,024 times. Helplessly, the scientists of the empire fell into idleness again, and were addicted to games all day long. On the other hand, the officials of the Imperial Military Department were not as idle as these scientists. After the 1024-fold space folding technology was developed, the Empire's warships finally ushered in the last upgrade before the technological breakthrough. In the Imperial dockyard, Mingze looked at the white warship in front of him, which was shaped like a submarine during World War II, with some surprise, not knowing what to say. The Zeus III warship in front of him, which was finally finalized, can be said to have a completely different appearance from its brothers, Zeus class and Zeus II warships. It can even be said that it suddenly changed its style. If this warship was released, it is estimated that the people of the Empire would not believe that this is their own warship. There is no gap on the streamlined ship body that is 1,000 meters long, as if the entire warship is integrated. The only opening on the hull is the thruster at the rear of the warship, and the opening at the thruster is still in the style of shutters, as if it is designed to prevent the thruster jet from becoming a weakness on the warship. Is this the main battleship that our empire will serve next? You designed this shape after designing for so long. What's the difference between it and a civilian spaceship? Where is the domineering power of our empire? Where is the weapon launch port? Mingze pointed at the Zeus III battleship and shouted to the designers who followed him. Your Majesty, the head of design wiped the sweat from his forehead, not knowing how to answer. Modify the design later, make the shape more angular, more ferocious. Make it look like a battleship. Also, what about the weapon system of this battleship? Mingze sighed and waved his hand. He was really speechless. He was lazy and did not supervise the design of the battleship. In the end, he designed such an ugly spaceship. Your Majesty, Let me tell you about this epic-making super battleship first, and then we'll talk about the weapons. The head of design put on a flattering smile on his face. Half bowed and said softly. Li Mingze nodded. Go ahead, Your Majesty. Since the 1024-fold space folding technology has matured, our battleship uses this top-level space folding technology. Its 1,000-meter-long hull doesn't look very big, but the space inside it is much more than that. The space inside is more than 1,000 times larger than it appears on the surface. A holographic image appeared in front of Li Mingze, and the picture was a schematic diagram of the unfolding of the battleship's internal space. Chapter 745 The experiment begins. Such a large space allows us to equip this battleship with more equipment. We have redesigned a new shield system for this battleship. Due to the reduction in the size of the battleship, the strength of the shield per unit area has been greatly enhanced. We have also prepared a shield connection device for it, so that this battleship can integrate the shield with other battleships. The outermost layer of the battleship is still our dimensional armor, and the inner layer is 2 layers of crystal armor. However, due to the reduction in the surface area of the battleship, the strength of the dimensional armor is much less than before, but the advantage is that the shield strength we have improved is enough to make up for the loss of defense and even enhance it. The extremely shrunken hull can greatly reduce the area that may be hit by bullets, thereby improving the survivability of the battleship. The application of space folding makes the weight of Zeus II only the size of an ordinary destroyer, which improves its maneuverability, the design manager explained to Li Mingze. I understand all this, I just want to know where the weapons of this battleship are. Li Mingze frowned as he looked at the smooth surface of the battleship. A designer stood up and unfolded a holographic image from his hand again. Your Majesty, please allow us to show you the most advanced technology of our empire, the designer said as he gently swiped his hand on the tablet. Suddenly, hundreds of windows of different sizes flashed on both sides of the Zeus II warship parked in the dock. These windows densely covered the entire warship, and then gun barrels of varying thicknesses stretched out from these space windows suspended in the air. In order to ensure the overall strength of the warship, we did not design a conventional muzzle on the warship, but left all the weapons inside the warship. When they need to attack, open the space windows around the warship directly, and these weapons inside the warship can attack directly through these windows. As the designer waved his arm, Li Mingze could see the gun barrels in these windows dancing along his arm, extremely flexible. Originally, the space folding technology allowed this Zeus II to carry more ammunition. However, after we applied the space folding technology to the shells, due to the non-superposition of space, the shells could not be stuffed into the space folding device of the warship. After using the space folding device, we can only design a separate magazine for it to store these physical ammunition. The designer shook his head regretfully. Li Mingze was shocked. If it could not be put into the space folding magazine, how much ammunition could this warship of only 1,000 meters carry? Your Majesty, I know what you are thinking. The designer smiled slightly, and the holographic image in his hand turned into an ordinary warhead. This is a high-explosive warhead that uses space folding technology. It is only the size of our fist, but its power is not small at all. Moreover, due to its reduced size and mass, it is more difficult for the enemy to intercept it. Similarly, we need less time and energy to accelerate it to sublight speed, which greatly increases the firing rate of our weapons. Of course, the solid warheads used for physical attacks are still stored in the space folding magazine and are not mixed with these warheads. The designer proudly showed Li Mingze their latest masterpiece. Very good. Very good. I am very satisfied with everything except the appearance of this battleship. Li Mingze clapped his hands in satisfaction. He had already imagined that when millions of these Zeus II battleships flew in front of the enemy might laugh at how powerful these destroyer-sized battleships could be. And then the Empire's battleships would be able to slap them in the face. In addition to the Zeus II battleships, the size of all the Empire's space units has been greatly reduced. The fleet that was originally able to block the stars can now only barely block the moonlight. But their combat effectiveness has not only not been reduced, but has also been greatly enhanced. The Empire has now officially entered a new era, in which the combat effectiveness of warships is no longer constrained by size. Time flies again, and in the blink of an eye, another 100 years have passed. During this 100 years, the various experimental civilizations have completely digested the damaged ring worlds prepared for them by the Empire. After possessing nearly top-level technology, these experimental civilizations finally launched an attack on the entire river system. In just 50 years, these civilizations have dominated their respective river systems, and this is when the experiment really began. As one of the 3 experimental civilizations in the experiment, one of them is set to verify whether the technological bottleneck is related to the space-folding technology. Its territory will remain in its current state under the guidance of the Empire, and the population has been guided to be in a normal state for nearly 400 years. Next, the Empire will create an accident to allow this civilization to obtain space-folding technology. The second experimental civilization, because it needs to study whether breaking the bottleneck is related to population, this civilization was not given space-folding technology, but their population, under the guidance of the Empire's observers, increased to a very terrifying level using clones. Their average population density is far higher than that of the Empire's #1 river system in the Empire's homeland. The third experimental subject, the Tianyi Empire, was used to study whether it was related to the area of territory. Therefore, the Empire specially prepared a new river system for it, which was next to the river system of this civilization. They only needed to pass through a portal relic to easily reach this new river system. Of course, the teleportation technology Empire could not be given to the Tianyi Empire. What if these civilizations mastered the teleportation technology and ran away? Therefore, this portal cannot be disassembled. Once it is disassembled for research, it will self-destruct. Soon, these 3 civilizations developed technology to the point where it was on par with the current empire. The person in charge of this research project and a group of scientists began to get nervous. Because they must always monitor the technological development of these civilizations through observers. If they let their technology surpass the empire and finally defeat the Sith Empire that was doing the experiment, it would be a joke. However, after waiting for a long time, these civilizations did not experience the scientific research bottleneck phenomenon like the Empire. But the scientific research speed was getting faster and faster. This made the scientists of the Sith Empire and Mingze anxious. If there was no sign of a scientific research bottleneck after a period of time, the Empire would have to take ruthless action to eliminate them. Even if they could not find the cause, they had to take action. Now the technological development of these civilizations has threatened the safety of the Empire itself. Just as the scientists of the Empire were waiting anxiously, something unusual suddenly happened in the Tianyi Empire. Chapter 746 Population and Technology. In the Imperial Command Center, an officer walked up to Mingze and handed him a document, saying, "Your Majesty, our observers lurking in the Tianyi Empire have sent back the latest news. The Tianyi Empire seems to have noticed our existence." Mingze lowered his head and fell into deep thought. It seemed that the time had come to make a decision whether to continue this experiment. After so long, the 3 experimental civilizations had not reported any news of technological bottlenecks. Obviously, this experiment was on the verge of failure. If it dragged on and these civilizations developed more advanced technology, it would not be good. They would most likely pose a threat to the Empire. Mingze's fingers tapped lightly on the table, making a banging sound. All the officers in the command center turned their eyes to Mingze. After thinking for a moment, Mingze showed a firm look. "Order the Hive Mothership to prepare to go out and completely wipe out these 3 experimental civilizations. I hereby declare that the civilization experiment has completely failed." Hearing Mingze's affirmative words, the scientists and officers in the control center sighed with regret, but for some reason, these sighs were mixed with a sense of relief. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Something is happening." Suddenly, an officer looked at the holographic image in front of him and raised his hand to Mingze. Mingze raised his eyebrows. "Oh? What's the situation, Your Majesty?" "The observers lurking in the second experimental civilization, the Star Empire, have sent back the latest news. Several types of technology in the Star Empire have begun to slow down their research speed, and this phenomenon is still expanding. Now half of the research in various disciplines in the Star Empire has stagnated," the officer shouted in surprise. Their 400 years of waiting finally paid off. The civilization experiment did not fail. This Star Empire is the experimental civilization used to study whether the bottleneck is related to population. If nothing unexpected happens, the technological bottleneck encountered by the Empire is likely due to the Empire's wanton expansion of population. However, it is not safe for only one experimental civilization to have this situation. The other two experimental civilizations must also guide them to increase their population to determine whether the bottleneck is indeed related to population. A few days later, in the study of the imperial palace, Mingze, Tianyi and Eva stared at each other. "What do you think about the population dragging down our scientific research?" Mingze was silent for a while and asked first. It was too difficult for him to think about the whole thing by himself. He had no choice but to call out the two major artificial intelligences of the Empire to study the whole thing together. Eva was stunned for a moment, and soon recovered her original expression and slowly said, "Your Majesty, I think it is very suspicious. Why is population related to scientific research? What caused the bottleneck in our technology? Why does the increase in population affect technology? Is there any advanced civilization playing a role that cannot be shown to others?" Eva's eyes flashed with a trace of hesitation. She seemed to have expected this matter, but she did not intend to tell the truth. "Your Majesty, I think this may be the rule of the universe," Tianyi slowly explained to Mingze. "The rules of the universe?" Mingze frowned. He always felt that this thing was a bit metaphysical. "Yes, just like the speed of light in this universe is always a constant number, nothing can exceed the speed of light in this universe, and all objects have gravity. These are the rules that maintain the operation of the entire universe. Since the rules of the universe can limit the speed of a certain substance, it is not surprising that it will limit the technology of a civilization." Tianyi took a sip of tea on the table and continued to explain. Mingze paused, as if he was thinking about a language. "If the population of the Empire really limits the development of the Empire's technology, then what should we do? What about the extra population in our Empire? Do we have to kill them ourselves?" Mingze's tone was full of bitterness. "You know, once it is determined that the bottleneck of technology is really related to the population, then if the Empire wants to continue to develop, it must clear the excess population. At that time, Mingze, may raise the butcher knife against his own citizens and become a devil-like existence." He admitted that if he wanted to destroy the enemy, he could be merciless and easily destroy an enemy star system without blinking an eye. But he couldn't do it to his own citizens. He treated every citizen of the Empire as a child. He couldn't imagine the scene of raising a butcher knife to his own children. At this time, the study fell into silence. Tianyi and Eva lowered their heads silently. They had no choice. If the Empire was not ambitious and satisfied with the current level of technology, there would be no problem. But once an enemy with more advanced technology came one day, the only thing waiting for the Empire was destruction. However, if they were asked to kill their own people, even Tianyi and Eva, who were artificial intelligence, couldn't do it. This is not something that can be solved by killing tens of thousands, millions, tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions of people. According to their calculations, if they want to restore the Empire's technology to an unaffected state, they must at least eliminate 3/5 of the Empire's population. How is this possible? According to the Empire's current population of 20 trillion, the Empire needs to eliminate a full 12 trillion citizens of the Empire. What is the concept of 12 trillion people? If the Empire really does this, then the Empire will go down in history. After all, this is the first civilization to do this to its own civilization. "What should I do?" Mingze's facial features twisted together, and he didn't know how to go next. "Your Majesty, there must be a way out when the car reaches the mountain. Let's wait quietly for the news of the other two experimental civilizations." Tianyi hesitated for a moment, and finally did not say what was in his mind, but comforted Mingze. Soon, the other two experimental civilizations also began to increase their populations crazily under the guidance of the Empire's observers. Although the cost was the loss of nearly 80% of the observers, now the Empire is also fighting for the test data. As expected by Mingze, these civilizations began to show signs of slowing down scientific and technological research and development after the population continued to increase. However, because the population increase was not large enough, this sign was very subtle. If the Empire had not known about it long ago, it would not have discovered such a small delay. Chapter 747 Population Reduction Plan. Although Mingze did not want to raise the butcher knife against the citizens of the Empire under his command, he did not feel anything for the people of the three experimental civilizations. When the three Empires' hive motherships arrived at the three river systems, the outcome of the war was already determined. After each hive mothership was upgraded with space-folding technology, the 100 trillion wasp drones it carried could be said to be covering the sky and the sun. All hostile facilities disappeared completely wherever the swarm went. The three experimental civilizations that had just unified the river system were no match for the Empire's swarm. As soon as the two sides met, the swarm of bees directly devoured the fleets of the three civilizations. After dozens of minutes, except for the flying swarms, the former fleets had disappeared. All the materials on these warships became materials for the motherships to replenish the lost Wasp fighters. In less than a month, the fleets of the three experimental civilizations were all destroyed, and all the buildings in the orbits of these civilizations had been devoured by the swarms. Now the people of these three experimental civilizations can only shrink on the surface of the planet and dare not show their heads. Any spacecraft that dares to break through the atmosphere will eventually be swallowed by the swarm. After taking control of all the planets of the three experimental civilizations, the Empire immediately began to conduct experiments on these experimental civilizations. According to the calculation, if technology is to return to normal, the only way is to reduce the population. There are more than one way to reduce the population. Killing all the excess population is one way. Sending the excess population to a dormant chamber is another way. Of course, whether this method will work depends on the experimental results. The third method is a method between the two, which is to kill all the people and then extract their souls and store them in a specific container. The Empire began to use these three methods on the three experimental civilizations one by one. 10 years have passed. The first experimental civilization, that is, the civilization that used the most primitive and brutal method of slaughter to reduce its population, successfully restored its technology research and development to normal after the population was reduced. As for the second experimental civilization, Mingze did not think that this method of sealing up the excess population in dormancy would succeed. But unexpectedly, this method actually worked. After more than half of the population was frozen in dormancy, the technology research and development of this civilization also returned to normal. Not to mention the third experiment, it also returned to the normal speed of technology research and development. At this time, the conclusion of the experiment came out, that is, as long as the daily population is kept below 10 trillion, the speed of technological research and development of this civilization will not be slowed down. The excess population can be completely sealed in the dormant chamber, so that the Empire can be restored to operation without killing them. But Mingze knew that this was no different from killing these people. After all, he didn't know when these people would wake up again. As long as the population of the Empire was limited to 10 trillion, these excess populations might never have a chance to wake up again in their lifetime after dormancy. In this case, they were tantamount to being killed. Therefore, Mingze fell into a new dilemma, that is, how to select the people to be frozen, and how to do ideological work for these people so that they would voluntarily be frozen. Compulsory freezing is indeed feasible, but Mingze couldn't get over the hurdle in his heart. What's more, this is likely to cause dissatisfaction in the Empire and seriously affect his prestige. Your Majesty, there may be some turning point in the matter, Tianyi suddenly comforted. Oh? What turning point? Mingze asked puzzledly. Your Majesty, have you forgotten the existence of the virtual world? After being frozen, these people can enter the virtual world to live out the rest of their lives. In this way, these people have only changed places, but they can experience the life they could not have before, and they can even achieve immortality in a certain sense, Tianyi explained, looking into Mingze's eyes. That's right, once the body enters hibernation and the consciousness enters the virtual world, it means that these people's bodies will stop metabolizing, and their bodies can exist for thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of years. As long as their bodies are not dead, their consciousness can gallop in the virtual world forever, and they don't have to fear death or hunger. These people can do many things in the virtual world that they could not do before. They can choose what kind of world and what kind of era they live in. These people can choose to be born in a magical world or in the Earth in the 1980s. In the fantasy world, any place that people can think of can be created. Such conditions can still attract many people to enter the hibernation chamber and freeze completely. After all, the Empire now has less than 8 trillion people working in the true sense. After scientists and technicians, the rest are old people, children, and citizens who play games at home. These citizens can't create any value for the Empire anyway, so it's better to let them go into complete hibernation. They have everything they want in the virtual world. No, I think I still need to tell my citizens the real situation. They have the right to know the truth, and they also have the right to choose their own lives, Li Mingze shook his head slightly and rejected Tianyi's plan to trick people into entering the virtual world. If he had just come to the Empire, he would still regard these citizens of the Empire as NPCs in the game. Now he sees these citizens of the Empire as living people. Your Majesty, as you wish. Tianyi nodded and disappeared. The next day, Li Mingze delivered an important speech to the entire Empire through TV. Dear citizens of the Empire has now fallen into the restrictions of the rules of this universe. With a rapid increase in the population of the Empire, the speed of scientific research and development in our Empire has gradually slowed down and finally reached the ceiling of known science. If we don't reduce the population, then the technology of our Empire will stagnate until a more powerful civilization emerges to destroy us. Li Mingze's serious expression appeared on the screens of all devices in the Empire through holographic images. The citizens of the Empire also learned about the current situation of the Empire through this national speech. In order to enable the Empire to continue to develop, we decided to put a part of the population into hibernation to get the Empire back on the right track. Li Mingze slowly spoke out his plan. Chapter 748 Population Dormancy. According to what their emperor said on TV, if the Empire wants to return to normal, 12 trillion citizens of the Empire must go into hibernation. The audience in front of the TV couldn't help but hold their breath. Originally, they thought that the Empire only needed to freeze a part of the population, but they never expected that they would need to freeze 3/5 of the population. People fell into silence. Although Li Mingze had just told them that after entering the hibernation chamber, people would live in a virtual world. But how many people are willing to abandon their real lives and enter the virtual world to spend the rest of their lives? On TV, Li Mingze also listed the possible adverse consequences that might occur if the Empire could not return to the normal development track, and the citizens of the Empire hesitated. Now there are only two choices before them: for the country, for civilization, or for themselves. Although the Empire has opened a registration hotline and a registration website, and has also opened registration points in various cities, people only need to go to the registration point or log on to the website to apply for hibernation. The Empire will give them 3 months to deal with all the things in reality. In order to compensate these people, once the application is approved, the Empire will compensate them with 300,000 energy coins each, which is enough to buy a private spaceship or an ordinary manor on a colony planet. Those who receive this money can choose to give it to their families or squander it in these 3 months. After finally experiencing the things in reality, these people will be taken to the Empire's hibernation center by transport ships. Under the capital ring world, countless construction ships have built hibernation facilities in the underground space that can accommodate 20 trillion Imperial citizens. Imperial citizens who participate in hibernation may sleep here forever, or even never wake up. 3 days, 3 full days, no one came to register at the registration point and the registration website, and it was obvious that everyone was still hesitating. At this time, many elderly people suddenly appeared on the street, and these elderly people walked towards the registration point with a firm look in their eyes. The biotechnology that the Empire now possesses can make the lifespan of the Empire's citizens reach nearly 1,000 years. But it is now the 2900th year of the Imperial calendar, and it has been a full 880 years since the Empire stepped out of its mother planet Sith. Most of the citizens who followed the Empire all the way have reached old age. These elderly people have the deepest feelings for the Empire, so after 3 days of persuading their families, these old people in the Empire stood up without hesitation. They don't have many years left to live, and they no longer create any value in the Empire. Their only role is to receive subsidies from the Empire to live in their old age. But now the Empire is facing this situation, they are unwilling to continue this worthless life. It is better to offer their last remaining heat to the Empire. Instead of living and wasting the resources of the Empire, it is better to take the initiative to enter hibernation and make room for the young people of the Empire. These old people agreed through spiritual networks or forums to go to the registration point together on this day. They want to set an example for those who are still hesitating. On this day, all entertainment venues in the Empire were closed, and all entertainment programs were stopped. The eyes of everyone in the Empire were focused on these old people who went to the registration point. Some hesitant people made up their minds in an instant. They put on their clothes and left home. After all, hibernation is just entering the virtual world. They are not dead, so many people still made up their minds. At this time, some young people who stayed at home every day were also touched. They began to recall their lives and found that they did not seem to have done anything meaningful except receiving the Empire's subsidies and staying in the game every day. They did not create any value for the world. Since they stayed at home every day just to play games, why didn't they enter the virtual world directly? Anyway, they were immersed in a false world. They entered hibernation and made room for those who created value for the Empire. Overnight, the number of people who signed up to enter hibernation in the Empire increased rapidly, and in just one day, it was close to 10 trillion people. This is equivalent to half of the Empire's population choosing to sacrifice themselves to pave the way for the development of the Empire. Mingze was not surprised by this part of the population. The Empire's real working population was only 6 trillion people. The remaining 14 trillion people were either staying at home and indulging in the game world, or they reached retirement age and were idle at home. As the conditions of the Empire became better and better, the number of people idle at home increased. The Empire now has at least 4 trillion water that has not been squeezed out. However, at this time, those who have not made up their minds are basically unlikely to be willing to enter hibernation. After waiting for 10 days, the number of applicants stagnated. Now the Empire has 11 trillion citizens willing to live in the virtual world. Although the dormant conditions have been met, Mingze still plans to release some vacancies so that the Empire can increase the population of natural persons. Where will the remaining 1 trillion people come from? Of course, it is the clones of the Empire. After such a long period of development, the population of clones has reached more than 1 trillion. Excluding the clone soldiers in the army and some clone workers in high-tech industries, there are exactly 1 trillion clones who can be laid off for social services. Faced with these clones that can be made at any time and have no emotions, the Empire is not so kind and directly gathers them on a planet for destruction. The day of destruction is called Clone Sorrow. 1 trillion clones were gathered on a planet, and the Empire's antimatter cannon turned the planet and all the clones on the planet into dust in the universe. For the Empire, this is just like recycling a large amount of waste. All related records have been completely erased, and there will be no record of this incident in history. After all, no one knows when a Clone Protection Association will pop up to expose the good deed done by the Empire. However, no matter how hard the Empire tried to conceal it, this matter still fell into the eyes of those who had ulterior motives, and the clone who had obtained the mental linker was one of them. Seeing through the camera that the planet full of clones was destroyed by antimatter, the clone who had escaped from the control of the Empire suddenly had tears in his eyes. "I will avenge you." The clone turned off the holographic screen in front of him and disappeared into the shadows. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 749 Virtual World. Under the tearful gaze of the people on the ground, transport ships rose into the air. All the transport ships were loaded with the Imperial citizens who had entered a dormant state. After several months of preparation, these 110,000 Imperial citizens were sent to the dormant chambers on their respective colonies. These transport ships will carry these dormant chambers back to the starting point of the ring world, and these dormant Imperial citizens will be placed in the underground space of the ring world. All those who have not entered dormancy came to the launch center of the spacecraft on their own initiative to watch these spacecraft take off. They know that the reason why they can still live well in reality is because the people in these spacecrafts have made sacrifices, and they have given themselves the opportunity to live in reality. In the meeting room of the Imperial Palace, dozens of technicians responsible for the construction of the virtual world sat around the conference table with Tianyi and Mingze. "How is the construction of the virtual world going?" Mingze asked the technicians sitting there. These technicians are the leaders of their respective groups. Some of them are responsible for the construction of the fantasy world, some are responsible for the construction of the ancient world, and some are responsible for the construction of the fairy world. "Your Majesty, the construction of the virtual world has been very successful with the help of His Majesty Tianyi. The details can be said to be no different from reality. These virtual worlds also have perfect physical rules. We can say without exaggeration that these virtual worlds are real enough. People who enter them will not notice that this is a virtual world at all." A person in charge patted his chest and said proudly. "How is the construction of the reincarnation system going?" Mingze nodded and asked the second question. These people know about the reincarnation system. Some citizens of the Empire believe that staying in a virtual world for too long will cause boredom. Therefore, they ask for a way to switch worlds, that is, the reincarnation system. After entering the reincarnation system, these people can choose whether to keep their original memories when entering the next world. If they do not want to keep their memories, they can seal their memories. When they re-enter the reincarnation system after death, these sealed memories will be opened, and at the same time, their memories of this life can be integrated into their original memories without reservation. In this way, everyone can have the most novel experience in each world. Even if they come to the same world thousands of times, they will not get tired of it. After all, as long as they do not enter the reincarnation system, they will not have the original memory. The concept of the reincarnation system has attracted people's praise as soon as it was launched. However, in order to prevent those with memories from destroying the experience of other people with sealed memories, Mingze plans to divide it into two independent areas. The world in one area can only be entered by people with sealed memories, while the world in the other area can only be entered by people with preserved memories. In this way, people who simply want to experience life and those who just want to play can be perfectly distinguished. Mingze even designed a red line system for them. For example, if a couple enters hibernation together, if the two do not want to separate, they can apply for a red line. Then the system will automatically arrange an encounter for them. As long as they are in the same world, the two will meet because of various accidents, whether in this life or the next life. Of course, the red line system can also be untied. After the character in the virtual world dies, his soul will be sucked away by the vortex in the center of the universe and enter the reincarnation system to wait for rebirth. These are all designed by him based on his own experience and reality. However, when he came to this point, his brows furrowed. For some reason, the more he designed, the more he began to doubt whether the existence of this universe was real. Since he could let these citizens of the Empire reincarnate in various worlds, then was he actually in a virtual world? Or was it that the reason he traveled to this empire was because there was a bug in the system, causing his memories that should have been sealed to not be sealed? And when he first arrived in this universe and fought Zerg, he did not really die, but was reborn in the body of the nearest person. Was it also because of this reason? After all, the data in the two systems may not be compatible, and he could only be arranged by the system to be reborn in the body of a nearby person. And the reason why the citizens of the Empire could not be reborn later was because the system had fixed this loophole? Thinking about it carefully was terrifying. The more Mingze thought about it, the more he felt a chill rising from the soles of his feet. Your Majesty, the citizens of the Empire are expected to be able to enter the virtual world we have prepared in 3 months. Our current scientific and technological research and development has also begun to resume, and scientists have already discovered new substances. I believe that soon we will be able to continue to research more advanced technologies, and the ceiling of science and technology no longer exists. Tianyi's voice interrupted Mingze's thoughts. He took 2 deep breaths and forced himself to be strong. After all, even if this universe is fictional, he has no way to get rid of it. It is easy to know the truth. He will know it after he dies once, but who knows if this death is really a death? What if this universe is real, but he committed suicide? Then he will have no place to cry. Mingze paused and regained his spirits. Very good. It proves that our hibernation plan is very successful. From today on, all human-making equipment will be sealed indefinitely, and all cloning equipment will be sealed except for those used by the military. In addition, our fleet has been silent for too long. Order them to continue to attack other galaxies. Also, since our population cannot increase, then withdraw all citizens from colonies with environmental levels below level 5. In the future, our empire will not colonize any useless planets except level 5 planets. The so-called level 5 planet refers to a planet that is very suitable for human habitation in the empire in terms of gravity, oxygen content, content of various components in the air, vegetation coverage, temperature, humidity, etc. Planets below level 5 are planets suitable for human habitation but with small flaws. According to Mingze's idea, in this way, the Empire's population will be concentrated on these suitable planets, which is not only conducive to management, but also can continue to expand the Empire's territory. This can also greatly save the resources consumed by the Empire in building colonies. However, this is not a long-term solution. After all, the entire universe is so large that in the end, the Empire cannot have only a few hundred people in each galaxy. In this way, it would be meaningless for the Empire to occupy so many galaxies. These few hundred people would be lonely and want to die on different planets in a galaxy. Chapter 750 Preparations before returning to homeland. With the closure of all the Empire's man-making facilities, the Empire's population growth has stagnated. Fortunately, 80% of the citizens who can still move freely in reality are the elites of the Empire. Most of them are scientists and engineers, and the citizens with no value only account for 20%, or more than 1 trillion people. The clones in the Empire have become extinct, and there is a shortage of workers in various service industries and families. The clones that could provide various services have been destroyed, and now these positions are naturally vacant. At this time, androids and robots began to flood into the market, and almost every family has an android or robot servant. What these citizens don't know is that the robots and androids they bought with money are actually all converted from military to civilian use. These robots and androids can become elite warriors when they pick up weapons. They are not only the spies of the imperial family planted in the civilian population, but also a weapon to maintain the rule of the Empire. In the future, any accidents will be led by these robots and androids. In less than 10 years, peace has been restored within the Empire, and the operation of the Empire has returned to normal. The impact of the event that most of the population went into hibernation has faded, and the Empire's scientific research and development has returned to the right track. The Empire's fleet, which had been resting in the port for hundreds of years, began to regroup and headed towards the new galaxy. It was the 3500th year of the imperial calendar, which would be the 36th century if converted to the Earth calendar. The Empire completed the unification of the surrounding galaxies, and the entire galaxy cluster containing 38,000 galaxies has been completely controlled by the Empire. When the expansion plan was carried out later, these galaxies newly added to the Empire's rule were just numbers in Mingze's eyes. In the later stages of development, the number of the Empire's fleets was so large that it could attack hundreds of galaxies at the same time without a shortage of troops. The Empire's advanced fleet that could be directly teleported alone had reached the point where it could capture a galaxy on the day of teleportation. At this time, the Empire had truly become a powerful super-civilization. Now the only thing that limits the Empire's expansion is no longer resources and troops, but the Empire's population. The current Empire can barely maintain 300 million Imperial citizens in one galaxy. It seems a lot, but you have to know how many level 5 habitable planets suitable for human habitation there are in a galaxy. That is to say, there are only tens of thousands of Imperial citizens on each planet. If it were in the previous Empire, this would be the size of a village. But in the current Empire, this is already the population of a medium-sized city, and even smaller cities only have thousands of people. Land and resources, these once extremely precious things are worthless to the current Imperial citizens. If they want, each of them can be randomly assigned to a few star systems. It can be said that the current Empire has no interest in territory and resources. The only thing that can arouse Mingze's interest is to counterattack back to the main universe. Although the Empire's fleet is powerful now, the energy required to bring all back to the main universe is not a small amount. However, Mingze has been prepared. He has accumulated 10 million new Zeus III battleships. With these 10 million Zeus-class battleships as a base, it is not too easy to defeat the Zerg in the main universe. Of course, this is because Mingze does not know what the main universe has become, otherwise he would never dare to think that his 10 million Zeus III battleships can counterattack back to the main universe. He already had some ideas on how to return to the main universe. Since maintaining the space-time channel requires a lot of energy, it would be unprofitable for the Empire to build its own reactors. After all, the energy required is too huge. Now, aren't there ready-made reactors floating in various galaxies? The energy surging in the colorful stars is exactly what the Empire needs. Although these stars can only be said to be a kind of primitive reactor, they are large enough to provide a lot of energy. In addition, the Empire's biological Dyson sphere technology is very mature, and the resources consumed by a Dyson sphere are not ridiculously many. The only thing consumed is the nutrient solution. If the speed of light in this universe is infinite, then people standing outside the galaxy group where the Empire is located will look up at the starry sky and find that the galaxies occupied by the Empire are darkening at a speed visible to the naked eye. The reason why these galaxies are darkening is because the Empire has turned off the lights, and all the star systems without available resources have been used by the Empire as farms to provide energy. The stars in these star systems will be covered by the Empire's biological Dyson sphere in just 10 years. At that time, the energy generated by this star will enter the Empire's energy network. Mingze named this Dyson sphere construction plan covering trillions of star systems, Energy Farm. Once the Energy Farm plan is completed, the energy used by the Empire to build this space-time channel will be able to meet the requirements. That is when the Empire's fleet will counterattack back to the main universe. While the Dyson sphere was being built, Mingze began to study the virtual world that sealed up 10 trillion citizens of the Empire. It was a pity to waste these 10 trillion citizens of the Empire. He had to find a way to use these resources. Thinking that the Empire's current landing forces are still composed of old-fashioned clones, Mingze had an idea. These clones are a bit rigid in some cases because they have no emotions, and they cannot have emotions, but the citizens of the Empire who enter the virtual world do. Not long after, a special game world suddenly appeared in the virtual world. Anyone can participate in this game world, become a clone soldier of the Empire, and participate in the battles between the Empire and various civilizations. Since the virtual world has been isolated from the outside world for hundreds of years, the Empire has changed so much in these hundreds of years that these people have no idea that the game world they entered is actually the real world. Fortunately, the destruction of clones left a trillion people free, allowing these citizens of the Empire to reappear in this world as clones. They will receive new training in the Empire's military camps, and these citizens of the Empire know nothing about it. In their eyes, this is just a game. They have no idea that this game world is actually the real world. The Empire is training these soldiers for a counterattack on the main universe. Anyway, it is still a long time before the space channel is opened, so these soldiers can fight each other to hone their fighting skills. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.